I hired a guy to mow the lawn while my daughter was away. About an hour later, he called and whispered, "Sir, is anyone else in the house right now?" I asked, "What do you mean?" He said, "I hear crying from your basement." That is not a TV. My name is Julius Webb. I am 68 years old, and for the last 40 years, I have been a structural engineer. I know how to calculate the load-bearing capacity of a steel beam. I know how to spot a hairline fracture in concrete before it brings down a skyscraper. I built my career on seeing the flaws that other people miss. I built a fortune on patents that keep bridges from collapsing during earthquakes. But as I sit here today, shaking with a rage that feels colder than ice, I realize that my professional expertise did not save me from the rot inside my own home. I miss the structural failure of my own family. I miss the fact that the people eating at my table were not my loved ones, they were parasites waiting for the host to die. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever trusted someone who betrayed you in the worst way possible. It started on a Tuesday morning. The air was crisp and the sky was that piercing blue that usually signals a good day. My daughter Gabrielle had practically pushed me out the door. She stood in the kitchen holding a travel mug of coffee, her smile bright, but her eyes hard and unblinking. "Dad, you need this," she had said. "You have been working too hard in the garden. You are obsessing over the little repairs. Go to the lake house. Brett and I are going to Cabo for the week to recharge. You go to the lake, catch some fish, turn off your phone. We will handle everything here." It sounded like kindness. That is the thing about rot. It often hides behind a fresh coat of paint. Gabrielle is 32. She is beautiful in the way a statue is beautiful, cold and polished. She has always been ambitious, but somewhere along the line that ambition turned into a hunger that nothing could satisfy. She married Brett 5 years ago. Brett is a 35-year-old white man who calls himself a tech entrepreneur. In 5 years, I have never seen him sell a product. I have never seen him launch a website. I have only seen him drink my scotch and explain to me why my way of thinking is outdated. He looks at me with a mixture of pity and greed. He sees an old black man who got lucky. He does not see the nights I spent studying manuals or the years I spent on construction sites. He just sees the bank account. I drove to the lake house because I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to believe that they cared about my well-being. I sat on the end of the pier for 3 hours casting a line into the black water, but my mind would not settle. There was a knot in my stomach, a tension that felt like a cable pulled too tight. I kept thinking about the house. I kept thinking about the way Brett had looked at me when I left. He had been standing in the doorway of the basement playing with a set of keys. He did not wave goodbye. He just watched. I pulled out my phone to check the security system. I am a man of routine. I checked the perimeter sensors at noon and at 6. I opened the app that controls the cameras. The circle spun and spun. Then a message popped up in red text. "System offline. Connection lost." I tapped the screen. I tried to refresh it. Nothing. The entire system was down. My heart rate spiked. I installed that system myself. It runs on a dedicated server with a battery backup. It does not just go offline. I remembered the conversation I had with Brett a week ago. He had come into my study without knocking. "Julius, we need to upgrade the firmware on the security hub," he had said. "The old protocols are vulnerable. I can patch it for you." I told him it was fine. He insisted. He said he was worried about hackers. He said he was worried about my safety. I let him touch the system. I let him have the admin password. I tried to call the landline at the house. No answer. Of course there was no answer. They were supposed to be on a plane to Mexico, but the silence felt heavy. It felt malicious. I sat there on the pier, and the silence of the lake suddenly felt like isolation. It felt like I had been sent away, not for a vacation, but for an exile. Then my phone rang. The screen said, "Tyrell." Tyrell is my lawn guy. He is 28 years old, a former Marine who did 2 tours overseas. He is a man of few words. He does his job with a precision I admire. He does not cut corners. If Tyrell was calling me, it was not to chat about the weather. I answered the phone. "Tyrell, is everything okay?" His voice was a whisper. It was tight and strained. "Mr. Webb, are you absolutely sure the house is empty?" "Yes, Tyrell," I said. "I am at the lake. Gabrielle and Brett are traveling. My granddaughter Mia is in Switzerland at boarding school. The house is locked up." "Why?" There was a pause. I could hear his breathing. It was fast. "Sir, I am standing by the east wall, the one behind the hydrangea bushes. I turned off the mower because I thought I hit a rock. It got quiet. And then I heard it." "Heard what, Tyrell?" "I hear crying, sir." "From the ventilation shaft, the one that feeds into the basement." My grip on the phone tightened until I thought the glass would crack. "What kind of crying?" "It is a scratching sound, Mr. Webb, like someone scratching on metal. And a voice. It is weak. It sounds hoarse, but it is not a TV. A TV does not sound like that. A TV does not gasp for air." "What is the voice saying, Tyrell? Tell me." He hesitated. "Sir, she is saying your name. She is saying Grandpa." The world stopped. The birds stopped singing. The water stopped lapping against the pier. The only sound was the blood rushing in my ears like a freight train. Grandpa. Only one person calls me that. Mia. Mia is 16. She is the daughter of Gabrielle and her first husband, a good man who died in a car accident before she was born. Mia is the light of my life. She is the only reason I tolerate Brett. She is the only reason I have not sold the big house and moved to an island. 6 months ago, Gabrielle told me that Mia had been accepted into an exclusive boarding school in Zurich. It cost $80,000 a year. I wrote the check immediately. Gabrielle showed me the acceptance letter. She showed me the brochure. She packed Mia's bags. We drove her to the airport. I hugged her goodbye at the terminal. I watched her walk through security. Since then, I have received emails from the school. I have received photos of Mia standing on snowy mountains, photos of Mia in a classroom. But every time I asked to video chat, Gabrielle had an excuse. "The time difference is too hard, Dad. She is in an intensive study block, Dad. They take their phones away during the week, Dad. You do not want to distract her, do you?" I believed her. God help me, I believed her because the alternative was unthinkable. "Tyrell," I said, and my voice was calm. The deadly calm of a man watching a bridge collapse. "Do not hang up. Do not leave. Do not call the police yet." "Why not, sir? If there is someone down there. Because if you call the police now, Brett will spin it. He will say it is a prank. He will say it is a guest. He has lawyers. He has connections. If we are wrong, I look like a senile old man, and they take control of my estate. If we are right, and they find out the police are coming, they might hurt her before anyone gets inside. I need to see it. I need to be there. I am coming home." I ran to my truck. I left my fishing gear on the pier. I left the cooler. I drove out of the lake house driveway doing 60 miles an hour on a dirt road. The drive home usually takes an hour and 10 minutes. I made it my mission to do it in 45. As I drove, the pieces of the puzzle began to slam into place. Each one was a knife in my heart. I thought about the basement. It was a finished basement, fully furnished. But 3 months ago, Brett had declared it off limits. He told me he was setting up a server farm for his startup. He said the equipment was sensitive to dust and temperature. He installed a new door, a steel door with a biometric lock. He said he lost the spare physical key. He said, "Julius, you do not need to go down there anyway. It is just loud fans and blinking lights." I let him do it. I respected his privacy. I respected his work, even though I never saw any money come from it. I thought about the food. 2 weeks ago, I walked into the kitchen and found Gabrielle unpacking groceries. It was an obscene amount of food. Cases of protein bars, gallons of water, large cans of soup. Not the expensive organic food she usually eats. Cheap survivalist food. When she saw me, she jumped. She looked guilty. "Oh, Dad." She had laughed a high-pitched, nervous sound. "We are trying a new diet. It is an intermittent fasting thing. We need to stock up." They went out to dinner at a steakhouse that very night. They threw a dinner party 2 days later with catered seafood. They never ate the soup. I never saw the protein bars again. I assumed they donated them. I assumed they quit the diet. I was a fool. I thought about the electricity bill. It had tripled in the last few months. Brett said it was the servers. He said the cooling system required massive amounts of power, but servers hum. Servers have a steady drone. The house was quiet. The only sound from the basement was the occasional clank of the pipes. I pushed the gas pedal to the floor. The highway blurred. My mind was racing faster than the engine. If Mia was in the basement, she had been there for months. She had been there while I sat in the living room reading the newspaper. She had been there while I ate dinner with her mother and stepfather. She had been there while I slept in my bed directly 2 floors above her. The image of my granddaughter walking through airport security flashed in my mind. I saw her wave. But did she get on the plane? Did I see her get on the plane? Number. Gabrielle said she would walk her to the gate. Gabrielle said I should go move the car because parking was expensive. I waited at the curb. Gabrielle came out 30 minutes later wiping tears from her eyes. She said it was so hard to let her go. She acted devastated. It was a performance. It was all a performance. I pulled into my neighborhood. The houses here are large. They sit on acres of land. They are separated by tall hedges and stone walls. It is a place where people value privacy. It is a place where you can scream and no one will hear you. I saw my house. It is a colonial-style estate. I bought it 30 years ago. I raised Gabrielle here. It was supposed to be a sanctuary. Now it looked like a tomb. Tyrell's truck was parked on the street. He was standing by the back gate holding a heavy iron bar he must have taken from his truck bed. He was looking at the house with the intensity of a soldier on watch. I parked the truck on the grass. I did not care about the lawn. I jumped out. My knees popped, but I did not feel the pain. I felt nothing but a cold, terrifying clarity. Tyrell walked toward me. He looked shaken. A man who had seen combat was shaken by what he heard in my garden. "It stopped, sir," he said. "The crying stopped about 10 minutes ago, but I heard a thud, like something heavy falling." "We are going in," I said. The front door was locked. I have a key, but I did not use it. I went to the back. The back door leads into the mudroom, which connects to the kitchen and the door to the basement stairs. Tyrell followed me. We entered the kitchen. It smelled of cleaning supplies, bleach and lemon. It was spotless. There was a bowl of fresh fruit on the island. A note on the fridge said, "Have fun in Cabo, love you, Dad." It was sick. It was a stage set designed to mock me. We moved to the hallway. The door to the basement was there. It was a heavy gray metal door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault or a prison. It had a keypad and a fingerprint scanner. The light on the lock was red. Brett said this was a server room. He said it contained intellectual property worth millions. I looked at the hinges. They were reinforced, but they were on the outside. A design flaw. Arrogance. Brett focused on the digital lock, but forgot the physical mechanics. He assumed I was just an old man who would never try to break in. He forgot I spent 40 years analyzing structural weaknesses. "Tyrell," I said, pointing to the hinges. "Give me the bar." Tyrell handed me the iron bar. I wedged the tip into the top hinge pin. I am 68 years old, but I have kept my strength. I hammered the end of the bar with the palm of my hand. The pin popped up an inch. I pulled it out. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. We did the same for the middle and bottom hinges. The door groaned. It was no longer attached to the frame on one side. It was only held by the deadbolt. "Pull," I said. Tyrell gripped the edge of the door and pulled with his entire body weight. I pushed from the hinge side. The metal screeched. The deadbolt twisted in the frame. With a final crack of splintering wood, the door swung open from the wrong side. A smell hit us instantly. It was not the smell of ozone and hot electronics. It was the smell of dampness, of unwashed bodies, of a bucket that has not been emptied. It was the smell of misery. Darkness swallowed the stairs. The lights were off. I pulled out my flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom. I descended the stairs. My hand was on the rail. The wood felt sticky. Tyrell was right behind me. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement opened up. It was not the comfortable family room it used to be. The windows had been boarded up and painted black. The furniture was gone. The carpet had been ripped up, leaving bare concrete. In the far corner, there was a mattress on the floor. A dirty gray blanket was tangled in a heap. Beside it was a plastic dog bowl with water and a bucket. I moved the light across the room. There was a pipe running along the back wall. A heavy chain was wrapped around it. The chain led to the mattress. "Mia," I whispered. My voice broke. The pile of blankets moved. A head emerged. It was Mia, but it was not the Mia I knew. She was skeletal. Her cheeks were sunken. Her hair was matted and chopped short as if someone had cut it with dull scissors. She was wearing a dirty t-shirt that was 3 sizes too big. There was a metal collar around her ankle connected to the chain. She squinted into the light. She raised a hand to shield her eyes. Her arm was thin, bruised. She did not speak. She made a small whimpering sound. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the cold concrete wall. She looked at me with absolute terror. She did not recognize me. She thought I was him. She thought I was Brett coming back to hurt her. "Mia," I said. "It is Grandpa. It is Julius." She froze. She tilted her head. Her eyes widened. They were huge in her gaunt face. "Grandpa," she rasped. Her voice was like dry leaves. I dropped the flashlight. I fell to my knees on the concrete. I crawled to her. I did not care about the filth. I wrapped my arms around her. She was shivering so hard her teeth chattered. She felt fragile like a bird that had fallen from a nest. "He said you were dead," she whispered into my chest. "Brett said you died. He said you had a heart attack and they buried you. He said nobody was coming for me." Rage. It was not a hot fire. It was absolute zero. It froze my tears. It clarified my mind. They told her I was dead so she would stop screaming. They buried her alive in my own house. I looked at the chain. It was a high-security padlock. I looked at Tyrell. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs. There were tears streaming down his face. His fists were clenched so hard his veins were popping out. "Get the bolt cutters from the shed," I said. My voice did not sound like my own. It sounded like a machine. Tyrell ran up the stairs. I held my granddaughter. I rocked her. I looked around the room. I saw the camera in the corner. The red light was blinking. It was recording. Good. Let it record. Let Brett see this. Let him see that the grave he dug has opened up. I looked at the walls. I saw scratches. I saw tally marks scratched into the drywall with something sharp. Counting the days, there were over 100 marks. 100 days. Tyrell came back. He snapped the chain with a single violent motion. I picked Mia up. She weighed nothing. She was 16 years old and she weighed nothing. "We are leaving," I said. "Where?" she asked, her eyes darting to the stairs. "Is he up there? Is Mom up there?" "No," I said. "They are gone. But when they come back, I will be waiting." We carried her up the stairs. The sunlight in the kitchen hit her, and she flinched, burying her face in my shoulder. "We cannot stay here," Tyrell said. "If they have remote access to the cameras, they know we are here. They might come back early. They might send someone." He was right. I needed a fortress. I needed a place they did not know about. "We are going to my old workshop downtown," I said. "It is in an industrial building. It has security. No one knows I still own the lease." We walked out to the truck. I put Mia in the back seat. Tyrell sat next to her. He took off his jacket and put it around her shoulders. As I started the engine, my phone pinged. A notification. It was a text from Gabrielle. "Hey, Dad. Hope the fish are biting. We just landed in Cabo. Having a margarita for you. Love you." Attached was a selfie. Gabrielle and Brett smiling on a sunny balcony. Brett was holding a drink. He looked relaxed. He looked victorious. I looked at the photo. Then I looked at my granddaughter shivering in the rearview mirror. I did not reply. I put the phone down. I drove away from the house. I did not look back. The house was dead to me now. It was a crime scene. But the game had just changed. They thought they were playing chess with a senile old man. They thought they had captured the queen and the king was helpless. They were wrong. The king is awake, and he is coming for their heads. I pulled the truck onto the grass behind the house, trying to keep the engine noise low. Tyrell was already waiting by the back patio door. He held a heavy iron pry bar in his hands, and his knuckles were white. He was sweating despite the cool air. This was a young man who had served overseas, who had seen combat, yet he looked terrified standing in my backyard. The silence of the suburbs felt heavy and suffocating. It was usually a sound I loved, the quiet of a well-maintained neighborhood, but today it felt like a conspiracy. It felt like the silence of a graveyard. We entered through the mudroom. The air inside the house was cool and smelled of lemon furniture polish. It was the smell of a clean, organized life. It was a lie. We walked past the kitchen island where the fruit bowl sat perfectly arranged. I could see the reflection of myself in the stainless steel refrigerator door. I looked old. My face was gray and my eyes were wide. I did not look like a man who was in control. I looked like a man who was walking into a nightmare. We reached the hallway that led to the basement stairs. The door was right there. It was a solid steel door painted a dark industrial gray. It looked out of place in my colonial home. It looked like the entrance to a vault or a bunker. Brett had installed it 3 months ago. I remembered the conversation clearly. He had stood right where I was standing now, blocking my path with a casual arrogance. "Julius," he had said with that condescending smile he reserved for me, "we are upgrading the server room. The data we are handling is sensitive. We need biometric security. It is industry standard." I had nodded. I had let him do it. I had paid the invoice for the installation. I had paid for the lock that was now keeping me out of my own basement. I looked at the keypad. It was sleek and black with a small screen that glowed red. It required a fingerprint or a 6-digit code. I had neither. Tyrell stepped forward, raising the pry bar. He was ready to smash the keypad. He was ready to tear the door down with brute force. I put a hand on his shoulder to stop him. "No," I whispered. "Not like that. If we smash the lock, we trigger the alarm. Brett has this system connected to his phone. If he gets a notification that there is a forced entry, he will call the police. Or worse, he will call his private security contacts. We need to be invisible. We need to get in without him knowing we are here until it is too late." I knelt down and examined the doorframe. Brett was not an engineer. He was a salesman. He focused on the flashy technology, the glowing lights, and the fingerprint scanners. He forgot about the physics. He forgot that a door is only as strong as its connection to the wall. He had installed the steel door into the existing wooden frame. And because the door was heavy, he had used reinforced hinges. But he had made a critical mistake. A mistake a structural engineer would never make. He had mounted the door to swing outward into the hallway. The hinges were on the outside. I felt a cold surge of satisfaction. It was the first time in years I felt superior to my son-in-law. He thought he was smarter than me. He thought he could lock me out of my own home with his gadgets. But he had left the mechanism exposed. I motioned for Tyrell to hand me the tool bag he had brought from his truck. I pulled out a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath and forced them to be still. I needed the precision I had used for 40 years on construction sites. I placed the tip of the screwdriver against the bottom of the top hinge pin. I tapped it gently with the hammer. The sound was a sharp clink that echoed in the empty hallway. I paused, waiting to see if any alarms would sound. The house remained silent. I tapped harder. The pin moved. It slid up a fraction of an inch, exposing clean metal that had not been painted. I kept tapping. My breath hitched in my throat with every strike. I was breaking into my own basement. I was a burglar in the house I had paid for. The absurdity of it made me want to scream, but I channeled that energy into my hands. The first pin popped out and clattered onto the hardwood floor. I caught it before it could roll away. 1 down, 2 to go. I moved to the middle hinge. This one was stubborn. Rust or paint had sealed it. I had to hit it harder. The noise seemed deafening to me. Bang, bang, bang. I imagined Gabrielle and Brett on a beach in Cabo sipping drinks, laughing about the old man back home. I imagined them checking their phones, seeing nothing, assuming their secret was safe. The second pin came loose. I was sweating now. My knees ached from crouching on the hard floor. Tyrell stood over me, watching the hallway, watching the windows. He was vibrating with tension. "Hurry, Mr. Webb," he whispered. "Please hurry." I moved to the bottom hinge. This was the hardest one. It bore the most weight. I had to use the pry bar to lift the door slightly to relieve the pressure. I wedged the bar under the door and pushed down with my foot. The door groaned. It was a sound like a dying animal. I tapped the pin. It slid out smoothly. The door was now disconnected from the frame on the hinge side. It was only held in place by the deadbolt on the other side. I stood up. My back cracked. I looked at Tyrell. "Grab the edge," I said. "Pull it toward you." Gently. Tyrell gripped the steel edge of the door where the hinges used to be. I pushed from the other side. We applied pressure. The heavy steel door twisted in the frame. The deadbolt acted as a pivot point. With a screech of metal on wood, the door swung open from the wrong side, leaving a gaping hole where the hinges had been. The air that rushed out of the basement hit me in the face. It was not the smell of a server room. It was not the dry, dusty smell of electronics. It was a smell that triggered a primal alarm in my brain. It was the smell of a cage. It smelled of ammonia. It smelled of unwashed human bodies. It smelled of rot and damp concrete. It was the smell of suffering. I gagged. I had to cover my mouth with my hand to keep from retching. Tyrell stepped back, his eyes watering. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh God, no." The lights were off downstairs. The darkness was absolute. It was a black hole in the middle of my hallway. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. I stepped through the gap we had created. I put my foot on the first step. The carpet that used to cover the stairs had been ripped away, leaving bare wood. It was sticky under my boot. I walked down. 1 step, 2 steps. The silence was heavy. There was no crying now, just a shallow, ragged breathing sound coming from the darkness below. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The basement opened up before me. This used to be a family room. There used to be a comfortable sectional sofa here, a large television, shelves full of board games. I remembered teaching Mia how to play chess at a table in this very room. It was all gone. The windows had been boarded up with plywood and painted black. The walls were bare. The floor was stripped to the concrete slab. In the center of the room stood a single metal chair bolted to the floor. I swept the flashlight beam across the room. It landed on the far corner near the sump pump. At first, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It looked like a pile of dirty laundry, a heap of gray rags tangled together. But then the rags moved. A head lifted. It was Mia. But it was not my Mia. It was a skeleton wrapped in skin. Her eyes were sunken into dark hollows. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her beautiful curly hair had been hacked off, leaving uneven patches of scalp visible. She was wearing a dirty, oversized t-shirt that hung off her bony shoulders. She was curled up on a thin, stained mattress that lay directly on the cold concrete, and she was chained. A heavy industrial chain was wrapped around her thin ankle. The metal cuff had rubbed her skin raw, leaving sores that looked infected. The chain led to a thick pipe running along the wall. Next to the mattress was a red plastic dog bowl. It was half full of murky water. A bucket sat nearby, emitting a foul stench. I stood there frozen. My mind fractured. I looked at the girl I had driven to the airport. The girl I thought was studying art in the Swiss Alps. The girl I had boasted about to my friends at the coffee shop. She was here. She had been here the whole time. While I ate steak upstairs, she was eating out of a dog bowl. While I slept in my warm bed, she was shivering on concrete. While I watched movies, she was living in the dark. A sound escaped my throat. It was a sound of pure anguish, a sound I did not know I could make. Mia flinched. She scrambled backward, pressing herself into the corner as far as the chain would allow. She raised her thin arms to cover her face. She was trembling violently. "No," she whimpered. Her voice was a dry, raspy croak. "No, please, I will be quiet. I promise I will be quiet. Do not hit me. Please, Brett, do not hit me." She did not recognize me. The flashlight beam blinded her. She thought I was him. She thought I was the monster who had done this to her. I lowered the light. I fell to my knees. The impact on the concrete sent a shock of pain through my legs, but I did not care. I felt like I was drowning. I felt the bile rising in my throat. "Mia," I whispered. "Baby, it is me. It is Grandpa." She froze. She slowly lowered her arms. She squinted into the darkness, trying to see my face. "Grandpa," she breathed. The word broke me. Tears flooded my eyes, hot and stinging. I crawled toward her. I did not care about the smell. I did not care about the filth. I reached out for her. She flinched again, but then she leaned into my touch. Her skin was ice cold. She felt brittle, like dried twigs. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her onto my lap. She buried her face in my coat and began to sob. It was a sound of release, a sound of total collapse. "He said you were dead," she cried. "He told me you died. He said nobody was looking for me." I held her tighter. I rocked her back and forth. I looked over her shoulder at the chain bolted to the wall. I looked at the camera in the corner with its blinking red light. Something inside me died in that moment. The Julius Webb who believed in rules, who believed in family, who believed in forgiveness, that man died on the basement floor. In his place, something else was born. Something cold. Something calculating. I looked up at Tyrell. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, staring at us with horror and rage on his face. He was crying silent tears. I gently pushed Mia back so I could look at her face. I wiped the dirt from her cheek with my thumb. "I am not dead," I said. "And you are not going to die here." I stood up, lifting her into my arms. She was so light it terrified me. "Tyrell," I said. My voice was low and steady. "Go to the shed, get the bolt cutters. We are cutting this chain, and then we are going to burn their world to the ground." Tyrell returned with the bolt cutters. The heavy steel jaws of the tool gleamed in the beam of my flashlight. He moved toward the wall where the chain was bolted to the pipe. The metal clanked against the concrete floor. The sound was sharp and loud in the small space. Mia jerked in my arms. Her body went rigid. The sound of metal on metal triggered something primal in her. She did not see Tyrell. She did not see me. She only saw the threat. She started to scream, but her voice was gone. It was just a high, thin, wheezing sound like air escaping a punctured tire. She flailed her arms, striking out blindly. Her bony fist hit my jaw. It did not hurt. What hurt was the look in her eyes. It was the look of an animal that knows it is about to die. "No," she gasped. "No, Brett, please. I will sign it. I will sign the paper. Just stop." She thought I was him. She thought I was the man who had turned her world into a cage. She pushed against my chest, trying to scramble back into the filth of her corner. She wanted to get away from the people who were trying to save her. I grabbed her wrists. They were so thin I could encircle them with my thumb and forefinger. I held her firm but gentle. I needed to reach her. I needed to pull her out of the nightmare before her heart gave out. "Mia." "Look at me," I said. My voice was loud, authoritative. It was the voice I used on construction sites when steel beams were swinging overhead. "Look at me." She squeezed her eyes shut. She shook her head violently. She was not here. She was trapped in a memory of pain. I realized logic would not work. She was in a place where logic did not exist. I needed something older, something deeper. I remembered the nights when she was 5 years old. She used to stay with me when Gabrielle was dating. She would have nightmares. She would wake up crying about monsters in the closet. I would sit by her bed and I would hum. It was an old song, a song my mother hummed to me in Mississippi, a song about the river. I pulled her close. I pressed her head against my chest so she could hear the rumble of my voice. I started to hum, low and deep. The melody rose and fell like a slow tide. River deep, water wide. She stopped thrashing. Her breathing hitched. She went still. I kept humming. I rocked her back and forth in time with the rhythm. I felt the tension slowly leaving her wire-thin muscles. I felt her heart rate slowing down against my ribs. I sang the next line. "The boat is strong and the stars will guide." Mia opened her eyes. She looked up at me. The terror was still there, but behind it there was a flicker of recognition. A spark of the girl who used to sit on my knee and ask me how suspension bridges worked. "Grandpa," she whispered, "you sang that when it rained." "Yes, baby," I said. "I sang that when it rained. I am here. The rain is over." She reached up and touched my face. Her fingers were cold and dirty. She traced the line of my jaw. She needed to know I was real. She needed to know I was not a hallucination brought on by hunger and darkness. "You are real," she said. Her voice broke. "You are really here." "I am real," I said, "and I am going to get you out of this hole." Tyrell stepped forward. He moved slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. He did not speak. He just looked at the chain and then at me. I nodded. He clamped the jaws of the bolt cutters around the chain link nearest to her ankle. He bore down. The muscles in his neck corded. There was a loud snap. The metal sheared. The chain fell away, rattling against the floor. Mia pulled her legs up to her chest. She stared at her ankle. The skin was raw and weeping where the metal cuff had been. She looked at it as if she could not believe she was free. I picked her up. I stood on shaking legs. The rage was a cold stone in my stomach, but my hands were steady. I carried her toward the stairs. We were leaving this hell. We were going back to the world of the living. We got her into the back of my truck. Tyrell sat with her, wrapping her in a blanket he kept in his emergency kit. I sat in the driver's seat, but I did not start the engine yet. I needed to know. I needed to know the full extent of the damage before I could decide how to fix it. I turned around. "Mia," I said gently. "Why? Why did they do this?" She was drinking water from a bottle Tyrell had given her. She drank greedily, spilling it down her chin. She lowered the bottle. Her eyes were hollow. "The trust fund," she said. The words hit me like a physical blow. The trust fund. When Mia's father died, he left a life insurance policy. It was substantial. I had set it up in a trust for her education to be released when she turned 18 or if she went to college. It was worth nearly $500,000. I was the trustee, but there was a clause that allowed the funds to be released early for emergency medical expenses or educational opportunities if the beneficiary and the guardian both signed. "Brett made me sign," she whispered. "He brought papers down. He said they were for the school in Switzerland. He said I had to sign them to get my visa. I gripped the steering wheel. And when you read them, I saw the numbers, she said. I saw it was a transfer request. I saw it was moving the money to an LLC I did not know. I told him I would not sign. I told him I wanted to call you. She started to shake again. Tyrell put an arm around her shoulder. She leaned into him, seeking warmth. He hit me, she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. He hit me in the face. I fell down. He kicked me. He said I was an ungrateful brat. He said I was living under his roof, eating his food, and I owed him. And your mother, I asked. The question tasted like ash in my mouth. Where was Gabrielle? Mia looked out the window at the house where she had grown up. She was there, she said. She was standing at the top of the stairs. She was watching. My heart stopped. My daughter. The woman I raised. The woman I put through college. The woman I protected from the world. She did not stop him, I asked. No, Mia said. She came down after he hit me. She knelt down. I thought she was going to help me. I reached for her, but she just pushed the papers toward me. She said, Brett is right, Mia. You have to sacrifice for the family. We are drowning. You have money you do not need yet. We need it now. Stop being selfish. Just sign the papers and you can go to your room. I felt a bile rise in my throat. Selfish. They locked a 16-year-old girl in a basement and called her selfish for not giving them her dead father's money. I refused, Mia said. I told them you would never allow it. I told them I would tell you everything. That is when they brought the chain, she said. Brett said if I wanted to act like an animal, I would live like one. He dragged me to the corner. He bolted the chain to the wall. He said I would stay there until I signed. And did you sign? I asked gently. She nodded. Tears spilled down her dirty cheeks. After 2 weeks, I was so hungry, Grandpa. It was so dark. I signed. I thought they would let me go. I thought they would send me to school. But they did not. No, she said. Brett said they could not let me go. He said I would talk. He said I was a liability. He said I had to stay down there until I learned to keep my mouth shut. He said maybe in a year or two when I was 18 they would let me out if I behaved. She looked at me. Her eyes were old. They were the eyes of someone who has seen the absolute bottom of humanity. He has a room, she whispered, next to the furnace. He put soundproofing foam on the walls. He calls it the quiet room. When I cried too loud, he would put me in there. It is pitch black. You cannot hear anything. He would leave me there for days. The quiet room. Brett had told me he was soundproofing the furnace room because the machinery was too loud. He said he did not want the noise to disturb us upstairs. I had thanked him. I had thanked him for his consideration. I turned back to the front. I stared through the windshield at the manicured lawn, the lawn Tyrell had been mowing when he heard the crying. The house looked perfect. It looked like the American dream. Inside it was a torture chamber. Tyrell leaned forward. His face was hard. His jaw was set. Mr. Webb, we have to call the police, he said. Right now. We have the girl. We have the evidence. We call 911. They put out an APB. They catch them at the airport in Cabo. This is kidnapping. This is torture. They will go away for life. He reached for his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. No, I said. Tyrell looked at me like I was crazy. Sir, look at her. Look at what they did. You cannot protect them. Not after this. I am not protecting them, I said. My voice was cold. It frightened me how cold I felt. I am hunting them. If we call the police now, I said, turning to look at him, what happens? They get arrested in Mexico. They get extradited. It takes weeks. They hire the best defense attorneys money can buy. They use my money. They use Mia's money. They spin a story. What story? Tyrell asked. There is no story that explains a girl chained in a basement. You would be surprised, I said. They will say she was on drugs. They will say she was a danger to herself and others. They will say they were trying to detox her at home because they wanted to keep it private. They will say she is mentally unstable. They will say the chain was for her own safety so she would not hurt herself. They will produce the papers she signed. They will say she signed them willingly to pay for rehab. They are white and wealthy and articulate, I said. Mia is a black teenager with a history of trauma from losing her father. The system is not built for us, Tyrell. You know that. The media will pick it up. They will drag her name through the mud. They will make this about a troubled teen and her desperate parents. Brett will get bail. Gabrielle will cry on TV. And Mia will be the victim on trial. I looked at my granddaughter. She was shaking her head. I do not want to go to court, she whispered. I do not want to see them. Please do not make me see them. I will not let them win, I said. I need them to lose everything. I do not just want them in jail. I want them destroyed. I want them to have no money, no house, no friends, no reputation. I want them to suffer the way she suffered. I need them to die without dying. Tyrell lowered his phone. So what do? We disappear, I said. I started the truck. I have a place, I said. An old commercial building downtown. I bought it 10 years ago to store equipment. It has a loft upstairs. It has steel doors. It has security cameras that are not connected to the internet. No one knows I own it. Not Gabrielle. Not Brett. It is a ghost property. We are taking her there, I said. We are going to get her a doctor. A private doctor. Someone I trust. We are going to get her food. We are going to get her clean. And then Tyrell asked, and then I said, shifting the truck into gear, I am going to wait. They are coming back in 5 days. They think they are coming back to a secure house and a prisoner in the basement. They think they have won. I pulled away from the curb. When they walk through that door, I said I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel arrogant. Because when the trap snaps shut, I want to see the look on their faces when they realize they are the ones in the cage. We drove out of the neighborhood. I watched my house disappear in the rearview mirror. It was no longer my home. It was just a structure with a fatal flaw. And I was going to bring it down. The air in the living room was stale, a stark contrast to the fresh lake breeze I had left behind hours ago. I sat in my wingback chair, a newspaper spread across my lap, though the words blurred into gray static. I wasn't reading. I was calibrating. My ears were tuned to the frequency of the driveway, waiting for the crunch of tires on gravel. I had transformed myself. Gone was the man who had just broken a steel door off its hinges. In his place sat Julius, the retiree, the fading patriarch, harmless and slow. Then the sound came. Heavy doors slamming. The muffled thump of luggage hitting the pavement. Laughter bright, sharp, and utterly devoid of guilt. They were home. They were early. The front door swung open, slicing the dim foyer with a blade of afternoon sunlight. Gabrielle stepped in first. She wore a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, her skin bronzed from the Cabo sun. She looked radiant, the picture of a woman without a single dark secret. Brett followed, dragging 2 large suitcases, his linen shirt unbuttoned to show off a sunburned chest. The scent of tequila and expensive coconut oil drifted in with them. They stopped dead when they saw me. The laughter cut off like a severed wire. "Dad!" Gabrielle's voice was sharp, an accusation wrapped in surprise. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at the lake." I lowered the newspaper slowly, deliberately, trembling my hands just enough to rustle the pages. I blinked behind my reading glasses, feigning a moment of confusion before recognition set in. "I came back this morning," I said, pitching my voice to a raspy, tired timbre. "I caught my limit on base. The freezer at the cabin was full. I wanted my own chair." Brett dropped the suitcases with a heavy thud. His eyes didn't stay on me. They darted immediately past my shoulder, aiming straight for the hallway that led to the kitchen and the basement door. The relaxed vacation veneer cracked, revealing the tension of a jailer checking the locks. "You've been here all morning?" he asked, his tone too casual, too tight. "Yes," I said. "Read the paper. Had some coffee. It's good to be home." He walked past me without a greeting. I listened to his heavy footsteps recede into the hallway. He wasn't getting water. He was checking the keypad. He was checking the red light on the biometric lock. He was making sure his prisoner hadn't made a sound. He returned a moment later, his shoulders noticeably lower. He flashed a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Sorry, Julius," he said. "Just had to check the server status. We got some alerts about power fluctuations while we were away. You didn't go down there, did you?" I looked at him blankly, letting my mouth hang slightly open. "Go down where?" "The basement," he said, enunciating slowly as if speaking to a child. "The server room. Did you touch anything?" I shook my head, a slow, bewildered movement. "Why would I go down there, Brett? It's too cold, and I don't have the code. You said it was sensitive equipment." He exchanged a look with Gabrielle, a look of profound relief, a look that said, "The old fool knows nothing." Good, he said, clapping his hands together. You did the right thing. It is very sensitive. One wrong button could cost us millions. He was lying to my face about millions while he owed money to street thugs. He was talking about servers while he kept a starving child in a cage beneath our feet. I looked at his tanned hands, imagining them striking Mia, and I had to grip the armrests of my chair to keep from launching myself at his throat. I forced my muscles to relax. I wasn't a father protecting his cub anymore. I was an engineer watching a bridge buckle, waiting for the perfect moment to let it fall. Gabrielle came over and kissed my cheek. Her lips felt cold despite the heat of her skin. Did you have a good trip? I asked. Oh, it was wonderful, Dad, she gushed, sitting on the ottoman in front of me. We really needed the recharge. It's been so stressful lately, what with work and Mia being away. Mia, she said the name so easily. It rolled off her tongue like poison wrapped in silk. How is she? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Have you heard from her? Yes, she emailed us yesterday, Gabrielle said, pulling out her phone. Look, Dad, she's doing so well. She shoved the screen into my face. It was a photo of Mia standing before a majestic, snow-capped mountain. She was wearing a thick red parka, holding a snowboard, her cheeks rosy with health. I stared at the image. I know digital imaging. I hold patents in pixel processing. I saw the artifacts immediately. The lighting on her face didn't match the ambient light of the snow. The shadows were wrong. Her smile was pasted on, taken from a Christmas photo 3 years ago. It was a deep fake. A digital ghost created to placate me while they tortured the real girl in the dark. She looks happy, I said, the lie tasting like ash. She loves it, Brett said from the bar cart, pouring himself a drink. The skiing is incredible right now. I memorized the photo. I would use it later. It would be Exhibit A in their destruction. Speaking of skiing, Brett said, turning with a glass in hand, we actually need to talk to you about that Julius. Here it was, the pivot, the squeeze. What is it? I asked. Well, Gabrielle said, taking my hand. Her palm was clammy. The school offers this advanced excursion, a month-long training camp in the Alps. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mia really wants to go, but it's not covered by the tuition. I looked at her, my daughter. The woman I had raised to be strong and honest was looking me in the eye and lying to extract money from me while her own child lay recovering in a warehouse downtown. How much? I asked. 50,000, Brett said. He said it quickly, ripping off the bandage. It covers equipment lodging insurance. It's steep, I know, but for Mia, $50,000. They probably owed that exact amount to the loan sharks. Or maybe they just wanted a new boat. I leaned back, letting my glasses slide down my nose. 50,000, I muttered. That is a lot of money, Brett. It's an investment, Brett said, stepping closer. He smelled of desperation now. Think of her future Julius. You want her to have the best, don't you? He was using my love for her as a weapon. I do, I said softly. I want her to have the best. Then we need to send the wire today, Gabrielle urged. The deadline is tomorrow. If we miss it, she loses her spot. The urgency, the false time limit. The classic con. I can't wire it today, I said. It's Friday afternoon. The banks are closing. Brett's jaw tightened. He checked his watch. You can write a check. We can deposit it via the mobile app. It will clear by Monday. A check. Perfect. A check leaves a paper trail. A check signed by a man they claimed was incompetent was a legal landmine. Okay, I said. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out my checkbook. I will write the check. For Mia. I opened the leather book on my knee. My hand hovered over the paper. What is the date? I asked. The 12th. Gabrielle said, her eyes glued to the pen. I wrote the date slowly, intentionally making the numbers jagged. I moved to the payee line. Make it out to me, Gabrielle said. No, Brett interrupted. Make it out to Brett. I have the account linked to the school portal. They were fighting over the spoils before the ink was even dry. I wrote Brett's name. I let the pen slip on the last letter, creating a scratch. I moved to the amount line. 5, 0, 0, 0, 0. My hand shook. Not from age, but from the adrenaline of signing their death warrant. Every zero was a nail in their coffin. I signed my name at the bottom, Julius Webb. The signature was loopy weak. It looked like the handwriting of a man losing his grip. I wanted the bank to flag it. I wanted the lawyers to see it later. I tore the check out. The ripping sound was loud in the silent room. "Here," I said, holding it out. "For the ski trip. Tell her Grandpa loves her." Brett snatched it. He didn't say thank you. He stared at the numbers. He stared at the signature. He smiled a smile of pure, unadulterated greed. "Thanks, Julius," he said. "She'll be thrilled." He folded the check and tucked it into his shirt pocket. He patted it. Then he looked at Gabrielle. He winked. It was subtle. A quick drop of the eyelid. A twitch of the lip. But I saw it. I saw the message pass between them. He bought it. "The old man is an idiot. We won." Gabrielle smiled back a conspiratorial smirk that made my stomach turn. "You're the best dad," she said. "Why don't you go rest? You look tired. We'll order pizza." Pizza. A celebration dinner. "I am tired," I said. I pushed myself up from the chair, letting my knees pop. I didn't have to fake the exhaustion. Carrying this much hatred was heavy work. "I think I'll go to my room," I said. "Take a nap." "Good idea," Brett said, already pulling out his phone to deposit the check. I walked to the hallway. I felt their eyes on my back, dismissing me, burying me. I went into my room and locked the door. I went to the window and looked out at the backyard where the mower still sat in the long grass. I pulled out my phone and texted Tyrell. "Eagle has landed. They took the bait. Is she safe?" A moment later, the reply came. "She is sleeping. Doctor is with her. She is safe." I let out a long breath. I looked at my reflection in the window. I looked old. I looked frail. But my eyes were clear. Brett thought he had won $50,000. He didn't know that check was a tracking device. He didn't know that by depositing it, he was creating a financial trail that proved his fraud. He didn't know that the money was coming from an account I had already flagged for suspicious activity. He winked at her. He thought I was the fool. I sat on the edge of the bed. I listened to their laughter coming from the kitchen. "Enjoy it," I whispered to the empty room. "Drink up, because tomorrow the real performance begins." The house settled into a heavy silence around 2 a.m. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, which was merely a dark shape against the darker plaster. My body was exhausted from the adrenaline of the day, but my mind was a circuit board humming with electricity. I had played the fool. I had written the check. Now I had to secure the evidence that would put them behind bars. Brett had a home office down the hall. It was the nerve center of his so-called business. He kept the door closed but rarely locked it because he believed he was the only one in the house with the intelligence to operate a computer. He was wrong. I slipped out of bed. The floorboards in the hallway are original oak. I know exactly where they creak. I stepped over the third board from the door and hugged the wall. I moved like a shadow. I was not a father creeping through his home. I was an infiltrator in enemy territory. The door to the office was ajar. A faint blue light pulsed from the router in the corner. I pushed the door open just enough to slide through. The room smelled of Brett, stale coffee, and expensive cologne. I moved to his desk. His laptop was sitting there in sleep mode. I pulled a USB drive from my pajama pocket. It was not a standard drive. It was a hardware keylogger I had configured hours ago at the safe house. It would record every keystroke, every password, every email, and every chat log. It also had a script that would open a back door for remote audio access. I plugged it into the rear port of the desktop tower. I needed 30 seconds for the drivers to install. The screen flickered. A progress bar appeared. 10%, 20%. Then I heard it. The sound of a toilet flushing. It came from the master suite down the hall. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Footsteps, heavy and sluggish. Brett was awake. The progress bar hit 50%. The footsteps came closer. They were not going to the kitchen. They were coming this way. Brett often checked his crypto wallets when he could not sleep. I looked for a place to hide. The closet was too far. The desk was open underneath. There was nowhere. 70%. The footsteps stopped outside the door. I could hear his breathing. It was wet and congested. He was standing right there. I reached for the USB drive. If I pulled it now, the installation would fail and corrupt the port. He would know someone had tampered with it. I had to wait. 80%. The doorknob turned. The door pushed inward. I dropped to the floor and rolled behind the leather armchair in the corner. I pressed myself into the dust bunnies, holding my breath until my lungs burned. Brett walked in. He did not turn on the light. He stood in the middle of the room scratching his stomach. He looked at the computer. The screen was black. The installation script was designed to run in the background without waking the monitor, but the LED on the tower was blinking rapidly. Brett groaned. He walked to the desk. He picked up a glass of water he had left there. He drank it in long gulps. He set the glass down. "Please do not look at the back of the tower. Please do not look at the blinking light," he burped. He turned around. He walked out of the room, pulling the door shut behind him. I let out a breath that shook my entire body. I crawled back to the computer. The screen flashed a small green notification. Installation complete. I pulled the drive. I wiped the port with my sleeve to remove fingerprints. I slipped out of the room and back into the darkness of the hallway. I had the key. Now I could unlock their minds. I returned to my room and locked the door. I did not go back to sleep. I sat at my small desk and opened my personal laptop. I activated the remote listening software. The keylogger had successfully hijacked the microphone on Brett's computer, and it also tapped into the smart speakers in their bedroom. They had Alexa devices in every room because they were too lazy to turn off their own lights. Now those devices were my ears. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. The audio feed hissed with static, then clarified. I could hear the rustle of sheets. I could hear the hum of their air purifier. Then I heard Gabrielle. "Are you awake?" she whispered. Her voice was thick with sleep but edged with anxiety. "Yeah," Brett grunted. "Just got some water. Did you deposit the check?" "Yeah, it will clear Monday." 50 grand, baby. We can pay off the Russians. We should book the flights," Gabrielle said. "Once the money clears, we need to get out of here for a while. I cannot stand being in this house with him. He smells like old people." "He is harmless," Brett said. "He is a golden goose. We just have to keep squeezing him until he stops laying eggs." There was a silence. Then the sound of movement, the wet sound of a kiss. It turned into something more. I listened to my daughter and her husband be intimate in the room down the hall. I wanted to rip the headphones off. I wanted to throw the laptop through the window. It was a violation of nature. But I forced myself to listen. I needed to know everything. I needed to know how deep the rot went. They finished. The sounds of breathing slowed. Then Gabrielle spoke again. Her voice was cold. It was the voice of a stranger. "He is taking too long, Brett." "Who?" "My father. He is too healthy. I watched him today. He walked in with those suitcases like it was nothing. His heart is strong. He could live another 10 years. So Brett asked, "We have the house, we have the pension, we have Mia's money now." "It is not enough," Gabrielle hissed. "You know it is not enough. The interest on the debt is eating us alive. And if he finds out about the mortgage on the house, if he finds out we forged his signature, he will cut us off. He will send us to jail. He will not find out," Brett said. "He is losing it. Did you see him with the check?" His hand was shaking. "He forgot the date. The pills are working." "Not fast enough," Gabrielle said. "We need to up the dose." Brett hesitated. "If we give him too much, his heart might stop. That would trigger an autopsy. If they find the toxicity levels, we are screwed." "So what?" Gabrielle snapped. "We just wait. We wait while he wanders around here drooling." "I hate him, Brett. I hate looking at him. I hate how he looks at me like I am still a child. I want him gone." "We will double the night dose," Brett said. "Just the night dose. It will make him hallucinate. He will start seeing things. He will start screaming. That is when we call the doctor. That is when we get him committed. Once he is in the facility, he will decline fast. They always do." "Good," Gabrielle said. "Do it tomorrow. Put it in his tea." I took off the headphones. My hands were trembling. I looked at the hands that had held Gabrielle when she was a baby, the hands that had paid for her college, the hands that had built her a playhouse in the backyard. She wanted me dead. She did not just want my money. She hated me. She hated me because I was the only thing standing between her and the consequences of her own failures. I stood up and went to the bathroom. I opened the medicine cabinet. There on the second shelf was my bottle of heart medication. Digoxin. I take one every morning to regulate my rhythm. Gabrielle refills my prescription. She insists on it. She says the pharmacy is on her way to the yoga studio she never goes to. She brings me the little orange bottle every month and puts it in the cabinet. I took the bottle down. I poured a few pills into my palm. They looked normal. Small white tablets, round, scored down the middle. They looked exactly like the pills I had been taking for 5 years. But Brett said the pills are working. He said I was shaking. I went back to my room. I took a high-resolution photo of the pill. I crushed one into a fine powder and put it in a small plastic bag. I have a friend. His name is Dr. Aris. He is a toxicologist I worked with on a case involving chemical exposure in concrete foundations. He owes me a favor. I sent him the photo. I texted him. Aris, I need an analysis. This is supposed to be digoxin. I suspect it is not. Can you identify it by visual or do you need a sample? It is urgent. I waited. The minutes ticked by. I paced the room. My phone buzzed. Visual looks like a generic Aris wrote, but the scoring is slightly off. The imprint is a bit shallow. It looks like a press. A counterfeit. Do you have a sample? I have powder, I wrote. Bring it to me, he wrote. Or send a courier. I am at the lab. I could not leave. If I left again, they would get suspicious. I went to the window. I opened it. The screen popped out easily. I dropped the small bag into the bushes below. I texted Tyrell. Package in the azaleas under my window. Take it to Dr. Aris at the city lab. Tell him Julius sent you. Wait for the answer. Tyrell replied instantly. On it. I watched from the window. 5 minutes later, a shadow moved across the lawn. Tyrell. He was a ghost. He retrieved the bag and vanished. I sat on the bed and waited. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun began to creep over the horizon, turning the sky a bruised purple. My phone buzzed. It was Aris. Julius, call me. I put in my earpiece. I dialed. Julius, Aris said. His voice was grave. Do not take those pills. What are they? I asked. It is a cocktail, Aris said. It is mostly filler, but the active ingredient is scopolamine, combined with a high dose of LSD. LSD, I repeated. Yes. And a benzodiazepine. Julius, this is not medicine. This is a weapon. Scopolamine makes you suggestible. It makes you docile. It affects memory formation. The LSD in microdoses will cause visual disturbances, paranoia, and confusion. The benzo keeps you calm so you do not panic, but you will seem completely detached from reality. They are trying to drive me crazy, I said. They are doing a good job, Aris said. If you take this daily for a month, your brain chemistry will alter. You will exhibit all the signs of rapid onset dementia or schizophrenia. Any doctor who examines you would sign the commitment papers immediately. Thank you, Aris, I said. Document it. Send me the official report. I hung up. I looked at the bottle on the nightstand. It looked so innocent. Just a little orange bottle. They were poisoning me. They were methodically erasing my mind so they could steal my life. Gabrielle, my daughter, was mixing poison into my morning routine and smiling as I swallowed it. I felt a cold resolve settle over me. The grief was gone. The shock was gone. I went to the bathroom. I dumped the pills into the toilet. I flushed them. I reached into my travel bag. I had my own stash of real medication that I kept in a hidden safe at my office. I filled the bottle with the real pills. They wanted a show. They wanted a senile old man who saw monsters in the shadows. Fine. I would give them a show. I would give them a performance worthy of an Oscar, but the monster in the shadows would be me. The blender whirred to life at 7 in the morning. It sounded like a chainsaw cutting through bone in the quiet kitchen. I sat at the breakfast table, my hands folded on the placemat, watching my daughter prepare the weapon she intended to use against me. Gabrielle stood with her back to me. Her posture was relaxed. She was humming a soft tune. It was a melody from a lullaby I used to sing to her when she was afraid of thunder. Now she was the storm. She poured the thick green liquid into a tall glass. She added a sprig of mint on top, a garnish for the poison. It was a detail that made my stomach churn. She turned around and her smile was bright and terrified me with its sincerity. It was the smile of a nurse in a hospice ward. Here you go, Dad, she said, setting the glass down in front of me. It is a kale and blueberry blend. I added some protein powder and those vitamins the doctor recommended. It is really good for cognitive function. It will help clear that fog you mentioned yesterday. The fog I mentioned. I had not mentioned any fog. She was planting the narrative. She was building the reality she wanted me to inhabit. I looked at the glass. The liquid was dark and frothy. Somewhere in that suspension were the crushed tablets of scopolamine and LSD that I had flushed down the toilet hours ago. Or rather that she thought were in there. She had crushed the fake pills I had swapped, but she had also added her own special blend. Aris had warned me that they might add liquid sedatives to the food to speed up the process. I picked up the glass. The glass felt heavy. My hand trembled. This time the tremor was not entirely fake. I was looking at my own murder weapon prepared by the hands of my only child. "Thank you, Gabby," I said, using her childhood nickname. "You are a good girl. You always take care of your old man." I lifted the glass to my lips. The smell of kale masked everything else. I took a large mouthful. I held the liquid in my mouth. It tasted metallic, bitter. I swallowed a tiny fraction of it, just enough to coat my throat, and then I started to cough. I gagged. I bent over the table, covering my mouth with my handkerchief. I retched loudly, pretending to choke. "Dad, are you okay?" Gabrielle asked, taking a step back. She did not move to help me. She watched with clinical detachment. I spit the mouthful of smoothie into the thick folds of the handkerchief. I wiped my mouth, smearing a little green on my lip for effect. I folded the cloth quickly, trapping the liquid evidence inside. I shoved it into my pocket. "Went down the wrong pipe," I wheezed. "My throat. It burns." "Drink some water," Brett said from the doorway. He was leaning against the frame, watching us. He was wearing his running clothes, although I knew he had not run a mile in 5 years. "Drink the smoothie, Julius. It will soothe your throat." I took another sip. This time I just let it touch my lips before pulling away. "I cannot," I said, pushing the glass away. "My stomach. I feel dizzy." Gabrielle looked at Brett. They exchanged a glance of anticipation. Dizzy Brett asked, stepping into the room. "What kind of dizzy? Like the room is spinning." "No," I said. I looked past him at the empty space by the refrigerator. I narrowed my eyes. I focused on nothing. "Like the shadows are moving," I whispered. It was the cue. The curtain was up. It was time for the performance of a lifetime. I stood up. I let my knees buckle slightly and caught myself on the edge of the table. I looked around the kitchen with wide, frantic eyes. I needed to sell this. I needed them to believe that my mind was fracturing in real time. I looked at Brett. I did not look at his face. I looked at his knees. I tilted my head. "Buster," I said. Brett frowned. "What did you say?" "Buster, get down," I shouted. I pointed a shaking finger at him. "Bad dog. Get off the furniture." Brett froze. He looked at Gabrielle. "Who is Buster?" "It was our dog," Gabrielle whispered. "He died when I was 10. "Dad, what are you talking about? That is Brett. That is your son-in-law." I stepped forward. I grabbed a ceramic plate from the table. It was one of the good plates, part of the set my wife and I bought for our 20th anniversary. I said, "Get down," I roared. I hurled the plate at Brett's feet. It shattered with a violence that made them both jump. Shards of porcelain exploded across the tile floor. Brett scrambled back, his face pale. He was not scared for his safety. He was shocked. But then the shock was replaced by something else. Delight. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He held it up horizontally. He tapped the screen. The red light came on. "Dad, stop it," Gabrielle cried, but she did not move to stop me. She stayed out of the frame. She wanted the camera to have a clear view of the monster. I grabbed the fruit bowl. I dumped the apples and oranges onto the floor. I banged the empty bowl against the granite countertop. "The spiders," I screamed. "They are under the floorboards. Can you hear them? They are scratching." I fell to my knees. I started clawing at the grout lines in the tile. I scratched until my fingernails hurt. I was channeling the scratching sound Tyrell had described, the sound of Mia trying to escape. I was using their own cruelty as my script. "Buster is digging them up," I yelled, looking at Brett. "Good boy, Buster. Kill them. Kill the spiders." Brett moved closer, circling me with the phone. He was directing a movie. "Dad, please calm down," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "You are scaring us. You are not making sense. Look at me, Julius. It is Brett." I looked at the camera lens. I widened my eyes until they watered. I let a string of saliva droop from my lip. I made myself look pathetic. Broken. Dangerous. "You are not Brett," I hissed. "Brett is dead. The devil took him. You are just a husk." Brett smirked behind the phone. He loved that. It fit his narrative perfectly. Paranoid delusions, religious mania, violent outbursts. It was textbook. I stood up again, breathing heavily. I grabbed the edge of the table and overturned my chair. It clattered to the floor. "I need to go," I muttered. "I need to find the bridge. The calculations are wrong. The load-bearing capacity is insufficient. It is going to collapse." I stumbled toward the hallway. I bounced off the wall, intentionally losing my balance. Gabrielle grabbed my arm. "Dad, you cannot go anywhere. You are sick. You need to sit down." I shoved her away, not hard enough to hurt her, but hard enough to look aggressive. "Do not touch me," I yelled. "I do not know you." Stranger. Thief. I ran into the living room. I pulled the curtains down. The rod tore out of the drywall with a satisfying rip. Sunlight flooded the room. "They are watching us," I screamed at the window. The eyes in the sky. Brett followed me, filming every second. "This is bad, Gabrielle," he said for the benefit of the recording. "He is totally gone. He is a danger to himself. Did you see him throw that plate? He could have killed someone." I collapsed onto the sofa. I buried my face in my hands. I started to sob. Great heaving sobs that shook my shoulders. "It is all gone," I wailed. "My mind, it is gone." I felt Brett approach. He lowered the phone but kept it recording. "It is okay, Julius," he said. "We are going to get you help. We are going to take care of you." I looked up at him through my fingers. I saw the triumph in his eyes. He had the footage. He had the smoking gun. He thought the war was over. He walked into the kitchen. I heard him dialing a number. I knew who he was calling. I had read the emails. "Dr. Vance," Brett said. His voice was urgent, breathless. "I am sorry to call you so early. It is my father-in-law." "Julius?" "Yes. It happened." He snapped. "He is violent. He thinks I am a dog. He destroyed the kitchen. Yes, I have it on video. I have it on." I stopped crying. I sat very still on the sofa. I listened. "You can come now," Brett asked. "Thank God." "Yes, we will keep him here. Please hurry. He needs to be sedated. He needs to be signed in. We cannot handle this anymore." He hung up. He walked back into the living room. He looked at Gabrielle, who was standing by the fireplace, looking at me with a mixture of disgust and victory. "He is coming," Brett said. "Vance is on his way. He will be here in 20 minutes. He has the papers." Gabrielle exhaled. Finally. They looked at me. They saw a broken old man staring at the floor. I saw two people walking into a guillotine. Dr. Vance, the corrupt psychiatrist who had taken a bribe to sign my life away. He was coming here, to my house. This was the escalation I needed. If they had just taken the video to court, it would have been a long battle. But bringing a doctor to my home to sedate me and force me to sign documents under duress, that was a felony in progress. That was kidnapping. That was conspiracy. I needed to signal the team. I groaned and laid back on the sofa, closing my eyes. "I am tired," I whispered. "So tired." "Just rest, Dad," Gabrielle said. "Help is coming." I slipped my hand into my pocket. I found my phone. I knew the layout of the screen by touch. I pressed the side button 3 times. It was a pre-programmed shortcut. It sent a single text message to 2 people, Lawyer Harper and Tyrell. The message was one word: thunder. It meant the storm had started. It meant they had 20 minutes to get here. I lay there listening to the clock ticking on the mantel. Every second was a countdown. Brett and Gabrielle went into the kitchen to celebrate. I heard the clink of glasses, mimosas probably, a toast to their inheritance. I stayed still. I slowed my breathing. I visualized the structure of the trap I had built. The beams were strong. The foundation was solid. The doorbell rang. Brett ran to answer it. I opened my eyes. I sat up. The fog was gone. The confusion was gone. The monster was ready to greet his guests. The plan required a sacrifice. In chess, you sometimes sacrifice a knight to expose the king. Tyrell was my knight. He knew the risks. We had discussed it in the safe house while Mia slept in the next room. He told me he was ready. He told me he wanted to look Brett in the eye and tell him exactly what he was. It happened at noon. The sun was high and bright, bleaching the color out of the manicured lawn. I watched from the living room window. I stood behind the sheer curtains, a ghost in my own home. Brett was pacing on the patio. He was on the phone, probably lying to another investor or begging a loan shark for more time. Tyrell drove the mower along the side of the house. He went off the path. He drove straight over the prize petunias Gabrielle had planted for show. He stopped the machine right next to the basement window, the window that was boarded up from the inside. He got off the mower. He leaned down. He put his face close to the glass, pretending to look for cracks, pretending to be curious. Brett saw him. He snapped. The stress of the last few days, the debt, the fear of being caught, it all exploded. He dropped the phone. He ran across the grass. "Hey," Brett screamed. His face was red. "Get away from there. What do you think you are doing?" Tyrell stood up slowly. He did not back down. He is 6 feet 2 inches of solid muscle. Brett is 5'10" in lift shoes. "I was checking the foundation," Tyrell said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I heard a noise. Boss, sounded like rats. Big rats." "You are fired," Brett yelled. He was pointing a shaking finger. "Get your equipment and get out. You are trespassing." I want you off my property in 5 minutes, or I am calling the cops. This was the cue. Tyrell threw his cap on the ground. He stepped forward, invading Brett's space. You do not fire me, Tyrell shouted. I quit. You think you are a big man because you inherited a house you did not pay for. I see you. Everyone sees you. You are broke. You are a fraud. And you treat this house like a prison. It was a beautiful performance. It was exactly what Brett needed to hear to believe he was in control. It fed his ego. It fed his paranoia. Get out, Brett screeched. He looked like a petulant child. Tyrell spat on the ground near Brett's shoes. He turned and walked to his truck. He loaded the mower. He did not look back at the house. He did not look at the window where I was watching. He drove away, leaving tire tracks in the grass. Brett stood there for a moment, chest heaving. He looked at the basement window. He looked at the street. Then he turned and walked back into the house. He slammed the door. He marched into the living room where I was sitting. He poured himself a drink. His hands were trembling. I got rid of him, Brett said. He took a large gulp of whiskey. That gardener. He was snooping Julius. I caught him trying to pry open the basement window. He is a thief. I knew it. I always knew he was trouble. I looked at him with my foggy, medicated eyes. The nice boy, I asked. The one who cuts the grass. He is not a nice boy, Brett snapped. He is a criminal. But he is gone now. I handled it. You do not have to worry about security, Julius. I am the only security you need. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Brett. You are a good man. He sneered at me. He drank the rest of the whiskey and walked away. He felt safe now. He had removed the eyes from the garden. He thought he was alone with his victim. 2 hours later, I told Gabrielle I was going for a walk. I said I needed air. I said the doctor told me walking was good for my circulation. Do not go far, she said without looking up from her tablet. Stay on the block, Dad. Do not get lost. I walked down the driveway. I walked to the end of the block. I turned the corner. A gray sedan pulled up to the curb. It was not a taxi. It was a rental car registered to a shell company I owned. I got in. I drove to the industrial district on the south side of the city. It is a place of rusted metal and broken concrete. It is where things go to die. I pulled into the lot of Iron City Salvage. It is a scrapyard. Piles of crushed cars rose like mountains of twisted steel. The air smelled of oil and rust. It was noisy. The sound of the crusher would mask any conversation. I parked behind a stack of shipping containers. Tyrell was waiting. He was leaning against a rusted Buick. He was not wearing his work clothes. He was wearing a tactical vest under a dark jacket. He looked like a soldier. Did he buy it? Tyrell asked as I got out of the car. Hook, line, and sinker, I said. He thinks he fired you. He thinks he secured the perimeter. He will be careless now. Arrogance is a structural flaw, Tyrell. It creates blind spots. Tyrell reached into his jacket. He pulled out a black hard drive. It was small, ruggedized. I got it, he said. Before he changed the codes. Before he wiped the server. Explain it to me, I said. Brett is lazy, Tyrell said. He reset the system password and he wiped the cloud storage. He thought that deleted everything. But this system, the one you installed 5 years ago, it has a local redundancy, a physical backup loop that records to a hidden drive in the attic hub. He never went into the attic. He does not know how the wiring works. I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand. It felt like a weapon. What is on it? I asked. Everything, Tyrell said. His voice was grim. The last 4 months. The audio. The video. Is it enough? Tyrell looked at me. His eyes were dark. Mr. Webb, there is a file from November 4th, 4 months ago, the night they brought her down there. Show me, I said. We got into my car. I opened my laptop. I plugged in the drive. I found the file. I clicked play. The video was grainy black and white night vision. It showed the top of the basement stairs. The door opened. Brett appeared. He was dragging something. He was dragging Mia. She was fighting. She was kicking and screaming. She was wearing her school uniform. She looked so small next to him. Brett spun around. He backhanded her across the face. The sound was tinny through the laptop speakers, but it hit me like a physical blow. Mia fell against the railing. She slid down 3 steps. Get down there, Brett roared in the video. Mia grabbed the banister. She looked up. Mom, she screamed. Mom, help me, please. Gabrielle walked into the frame. She was holding a glass of wine. She looked calm. She looked bored. She stood at the top of the stairs looking down at her daughter who was bleeding from the lip. "Stop making a scene," Mia Gabrielle said. "You are doing this to yourself. Just do what Brett says. We are doing this for your future." Mia screamed again. Brett grabbed her by the hair. He dragged her down into the darkness. Gabrielle watched them go. She took a sip of wine. She reached out and closed the door. The screen went black. I sat in the car staring at the blank monitor. I could not breathe. I felt a pressure in my chest like the weight of the ocean. I had suspected Gabrielle was compliant. I had suspected she was weak and let Brett bully her. But this was not weakness. This was active participation. She watched her husband drag her child into a dungeon and she closed the door. "She is dead to me," I whispered. Tyrell put a hand on my shoulder. "We have them, sir," he said. "This puts them away forever. Kidnapping, assault, extortion, conspiracy." I closed the laptop. "Not yet," I said. "This puts them in jail. Jail is too good for them. I want them to feel it. I want them to feel the walls closing in. I want them to know they are trapped before the cage locks." My phone rang. It was Dr. Graham Montgomery, my lawyer, or rather, Lawyer Harper, as I called her in my contacts to avoid suspicion. I answered. "Harper, Julius," she said. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "We have a problem." They moved faster than we anticipated. What did they do? "They filed an emergency ex parte petition for temporary guardianship," she said. "About an hour ago. They used the video Brett took this morning, the one of you throwing the plate and screaming about the dog." I closed my eyes. The performance had worked too well. They found a judge. Harper continued. "A judge who owes favors to Brett's family, or who took a bribe. I am not sure which yet. But he signed an emergency order pending a hearing." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you have a hearing in 48 hours, she said. "Friday morning. If you do not show up, or if you show up and act unstable, they get control. They get medical power of attorney. They get access to your accounts. They get the right to institutionalize you immediately. 48 hours. They are planning to commit you this weekend, Julius," she said. "They have a bed waiting at Shady Pines. It is a locked facility. Once you are in there, it will take me months to get you out. They will medicate you into oblivion." I looked at the scrapyard outside. I looked at the mountains of trash. 48 hours is plenty of time," I said. Julius Harper warned. "Do not do anything rash. We can fight this in court. I can get an injunction." "No," I said. "No injunctions. Let the hearing happen. Let them think they have won." "What are you planning?" she asked. "I am planning a party," I said. "A party?" "Yes. Gabrielle is planning a birthday party for me tomorrow night. She thinks it is a farewell party. She invited everyone. Brett invited his investors. They want to show off the house. They want to show off the senile old man before they lock him away. They want witnesses to my decline." I paused. "I am going to give them a show, Harper. I want you there. I want the police there. But do not come in until I give the signal. Julius, this is dangerous." "I have the evidence, Harper," I said, tapping the hard drive. "I have the smoking gun, and I have the victim. You have Mia. She is safe," I said. "She is ready." There was a silence on the line. Then Harper sighed. "Okay. I will have the papers ready. I will have the sheriff on standby. But Julius, if this goes sideways, if Brett gets violent—" "He will try," I said. "He is a cornered rat, but I have an exterminator." I looked at Tyrell. He was cleaning his fingernails with a combat knife. He looked calm. He looked ready. "I will see you at the party, Harper," I said. "Wear something festive. It is going to be a celebration." I hung up. I turned to Tyrell. "Get back to the warehouse," I said. "Stay with Mia. Do not let her out of your sight. Tomorrow night we bring her home." Tyrell nodded. He got out of the car. He disappeared into the maze of rusted metal. I drove back to the suburbs. I drove back to the house of lies. When I walked through the door, Gabrielle was in the kitchen frosting a cake. She looked up and smiled. "Did you have a nice walk, Dad?" she asked. "I had a wonderful walk," I said. "I feel much better. I feel clear-headed." "That is good," she said. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is a big day. We want you to look your best for your birthday." I looked at the cake. It was chocolate, my favorite. "I cannot wait," I said. "It is going to be a night to remember." The house was quiet, but it was the silence of a bomb waiting to detonate. I sat in my darkened bedroom with my laptop screen glowing against my face. The keylogger I had installed on Brett's computer was doing its job perfectly. It was feeding me every keystroke, every password, and every secret he thought he had buried. I was not just looking for evidence of the kidnapping. I was looking for the motive. I knew they were greedy, but greed is a broad concept. I needed the specifics. I needed to know the exact dimensions of the hole they had dug for themselves. I logged into Brett's cloud account using the password he had typed in 3 hours ago. It was Success 2024. The arrogance of it made me shake my head. I navigated through his folders. Most of it was junk. Failed business plans for apps that did not exist. Pitch decks for investors who never called back. But then I found a folder labeled Liability. It was password protected. I used the keylogger history again. The password was Mia. I opened the folder. It was not a business ledger. It was an autopsy of a financial disaster. I scrolled through PDF after PDF. Promissory notes. Loan agreements from companies with names like Quick Cash and Apex Lending. These were not banks. These were predatory lenders, the kind that charge 40% interest and break your legs if you miss a payment. I pulled up a spreadsheet. I did the math. My engineer brain crunched the numbers faster than the computer could refresh. Brett did not just owe money. He was drowning. He owed $600,000 to a shell company in the Caymans. He owed $400,000 to a private equity firm that was a front for money laundering. He owed credit card companies another $200,000. But the biggest number was at the bottom. A single lump sum of $800,000 due in full by the 1st of next month. $2 million. He was in the hole for $2 million. I kept digging. I found a scanned document titled Collateral. I opened it. It was a deed of trust. It was the deed to my house, the house I had paid for in cash 30 years ago, the house where I raised my daughter. I zoomed in on the signature line. There it was, Julius Webb. It was a good forgery. He must have practiced it for weeks. He had even added the slight tremor I sometimes have in my right hand. The document was notarized. The notary stamp belonged to Paul Hayes, the forger Dr. Montgomery had told me about. I read the fine print. It was a hard money loan secured against the property. But there was a rider, a clause that stated the loan would only fully execute upon the transfer of title. Brett had leveraged my home against a loan he could never pay back. He had sold the roof over my head to gangsters, and the only thing stopping them from collecting was the fact that I was still alive and the title was still in my name. That was why they needed me incompetent. That was why they needed guardianship. As soon as Brett had power of attorney, he would sign the final transfer. He would take the cash to pay off his debts, and the lenders would evict me. Or worse, they would evict me, and I would die in a state facility wondering why my son-in-law had failed me. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It was not fear. It was clarity. Brett was not just a bad businessman. He was a dead man walking. He was desperate. A desperate man is capable of anything, including chaining a child in a basement. I closed Brett's folder. I had enough on him. I had the motive. Now I needed to look at Gabrielle. I wanted to believe she was a victim. I desperately wanted to believe that Brett had coerced her, that he had threatened her, that she was just a weak woman who was afraid of her husband. If that was true, there was still hope for her. If that was true, maybe I could save her. I navigated to her user profile on the shared cloud. Gabrielle was not as careful as Brett. She synced everything. Her phone, her tablet, her digital diary app. I opened the diary. I started reading entries from 6 months ago, the time before Mia was taken. September 12th. Dad took Mia to lunch again. He bought her that art set she wanted. He never buys me anything. He looks at her like she is the second coming. It makes me sick. She is just a kid. I am his daughter. Why does he not look at me like that? I felt a pang in my chest. Jealousy. She was jealous of her own daughter. October 4th. Brett is freaking out about the money. He says the guys from the city are calling every day. We need cash. Dad is sitting on millions in patents, and he gives us an allowance like we are children. It is humiliating. Mia's trust fund is just sitting there. It is such a waste. I scrolled down. I needed to find the entry from November. The day they took her. November 4th. We did it. I told Brett we had to do it. He was scared, but I told him it was the only way. She walked in from school and she looked so smug. She asked where Grandpa was. I told her he was dead. The look on her face was priceless. I felt good. I finally felt like I was in control. I stopped reading. I had to close my eyes. The air in the room felt thin. She told him we had to do it. Gabrielle was not a victim. She was the architect. She hated Mia because I loved Mia. She hated Mia because Mia represented a future she could not control. She suggested the kidnapping. She suggested the lie about my death. I opened another entry from 2 weeks ago. February 15th. Dad is still breathing. He is so annoying. He wanders around the house touching things. I put the stuff in his tea today. I put extra. I hope his heart stops. I am so tired of waiting. I want the house. I want the money. I want him gone so I can finally live my life. My daughter wanted me dead. She poured poison into my cup and wished for my heart to stop. The last thread of hope I had been holding on to snapped. It made a sound in my soul like a cable parting under too much tension. The father who loved Gabrielle died in that chair. The engineer took over completely. Gabrielle was a structural failure. She was a load-bearing wall that had rotted from the inside out. There was no repairing her. There was only demolition. I closed the diary. I saved a copy of the entire database to my secure server. I sent a copy to Tyrell and a copy to Harper. Now it was time to pull the plug. I opened a new browser window. I navigated to the portal of my primary bank, the bank where I kept my liquid assets, the bank where the patent royalties were deposited every quarter. I logged in. The balance flashed on the screen. It was a substantial number, a number that represented 40 years of hard work, a number that Brett and Gabrielle had already spent in their minds. I initiated a wire transfer. Destination, the Webb Family Trust. Location, Cook Islands. This was a trust I had set up 10 years ago on the advice of a very paranoid lawyer. It was an asset protection trust. Once money went in, it was untouchable by U.S. courts, untouchable by creditors, and invisible to anyone who did not have the decryption keys. I selected the transfer amount. Select all. The screen prompted me for confirmation. Are you sure you want to transfer the entire balance? I clicked. Yes. The screen processed. A spinning wheel. Then a green check mark. Transfer complete. My checking account balance dropped to 0. I did the same for my savings account. I emptied the investment portfolio. I liquidated the stocks. I moved every single cent I had access to. I left one account untouched. The joint checking account I shared with Gabrielle. The account she used to buy groceries and pay the electric bill. The account Brett thought was a bottomless pit. I checked the balance. It was $5,000. I transferred $4,990 to the Cook Islands Trust. I left $10. $10. Enough to buy a sandwich. Enough to realize you are destitute. I sat back in my chair. Tomorrow was the party. Tomorrow Brett would try to humiliate me. He would try to prove I was incompetent. He would expect to take control of my empire. He would wake up to find he was king of nothing. He had signed promissory notes based on assets that no longer existed in this jurisdiction. He had promised payment to violent men based on a fortune that had just vanished into the digital ether. When those checks bounced, the fallout would be nuclear. I looked at the clock. It was 4 a.m. I had stripped them of their future. I had documented their crimes. I had secured the safety of their victim. There was only one thing left to do. I had to survive the party. I closed the laptop. I went to the window and looked out at the dark lawn. I wondered if Tyrell was watching from the shadows. I wondered if Mia was sleeping in the safe house dreaming of freedom. I was not going to sleep. I was going to shower. I was going to shave. I was going to put on my best suit. Gabrielle wanted a birthday party. She wanted a spectacle. I was going to give her a show she would never forget. The sun began to set over the estate, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and bruise-colored orange. My backyard had been transformed. It was no longer the quiet garden where I used to teach Mia the names of the birds. It was a stage set for a tragedy disguised as a celebration. String lights were draped between the ancient oak trees. White linen tablecloths covered round tables that dotted the lawn. A jazz quartet played soft, inoffensive music near the patio. It was the kind of party you throw when you want to impress people you do not like with money you do not have. I sat in a padded chair near the edge of the patio. I was wearing my best suit. It was a charcoal 3-piece tailored in Italy 20 years ago. It hung a little loose on my frame now, but the lines were still sharp. I had a blanket draped over my legs even though the evening was warm. It was a prop. It made me look frail. It made me look like a man whose blood had thinned with age and infirmity. I watched my daughter Gabrielle moving through the crowd. She was radiant. She was wearing a floor-length gown of shimmering silver silk. It moved like water against her skin. I knew exactly how much it cost. It cost $3,000. I knew because I had seen the withdrawal from the trust account 2 days ago. That dress was not just fabric, it was Mia's college tuition, it was Mia's food, it was Mia's freedom woven into silk and draped over the body of the woman who had enslaved her. Gabrielle laughed at something a guest said. She threw her head back, exposing her long, elegant neck. She looked like a queen holding court. She touched the arm of a man I did not recognize. She played the part of the devoted daughter perfectly. She would glance at me every few minutes with a look of practiced concern, then turn back to her guests and shake her head sadly. I knew what she was saying. It is so hard. He has declined so fast. We are doing everything we can. Brett was in his element. He wore a tuxedo that was a little too tight across the shoulders. He held a crystal tumbler of scotch in one hand and a cigar in the other. He was surrounded by a group of men in expensive suits. I recognized a few of them from the dossiers Tyrell had compiled. They were the investors, the men Brett had defrauded with his Ponzi schemes and his fake startups. They were the men he owed money to. He was laughing loudly, clapping one of them on the back. He looked confident. He looked like a man who had just secured his future. He thought he was celebrating his victory. He thought he was showing them the asset that would pay off all his debts. He was pointing at the house. He was pointing at the grounds. He was selling my life right in front of me. I scanned the perimeter. The shadows were deep under the trees. I saw a movement near the rose bushes, a flicker of darkness that was darker than the night. Tyrell, he was there. He was watching. I looked toward the side gate. I knew that Lawyer Harper was waiting in a van just down the street with the sheriff. I knew that Mia was safe in the guest house of a friend of mine 5 miles away, watching a live stream of this very moment on a secure tablet. The trap was set. The jaws were open. A waiter offered me a hors d'oeuvre. I waved him away with a shaking hand. I let my head loll to the side. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I was the prop in their play. I was the old dog waiting to be put down. The music stopped. The jazz quartet put down their instruments. A hush fell over the garden. The only sound was the clinking of ice in glasses and the distant hum of traffic. Brett stepped up to the small stage that had been erected near the pool. He tapped a spoon against his glass. The sound rang out sharp and clear. "Good evening, everyone," Brett boomed. His voice was projected by a high-end sound system he had probably charged to my credit card. "Thank you all for coming. It means the world to us to have our friends and partners here tonight." He paused for effect. He looked out at the crowd with a somber expression. He was a terrible actor, but the audience wanted to believe him. "We are here to celebrate the birthday of a great man," Brett said, gesturing toward me. "My father-in-law, Julius Webb, a man who built bridges, a man who built this home." There was a polite round of applause. I stared blankly ahead. I did not blink. But Brett continued, his voice dropping to a lower, more serious register. "We are also here to say a difficult goodbye. As many of you know, Julius has been struggling with his health recently. It has been a rapid and heartbreaking decline. We have tried to care for him here at home because we love him, but it has become clear that he needs more help than we can provide." Gabrielle walked up to the stage. She stood next to Brett. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked brave and tragic. "We have made the agonizing decision," Brett said, "to move Julius to a specialized memory care facility. Shady Pines. It is the best place for him. It is where he will be safe. It is where he will get the treatment he deserves. He deserves." The words hung in the air. "To help us understand what is happening," Brett said, "I have asked Dr. Vance to say a few words. Dr. Vance has been treating Julius, and he can explain the gravity of the situation better than I can." A man stepped out of the crowd. He was short and balding, with round spectacles and a nervous sweat on his upper lip. "Dr. Vance, the corrupt psychiatrist, the man who signed my commitment papers without ever examining me, the man who took a $50,000 bribe to declare a sane man incompetent." He walked up the steps to the stage. He took the microphone from Brett. He wiped his forehead. "Thank you, Brett," he said. His voice was thin and reedy. "I have reviewed Mr. Webb's case extensively. The cognitive deterioration we are seeing is classic rapid-onset dementia exacerbated by paranoid schizophrenia. The violent outbursts, the confusion, the inability to recognize loved ones. It is a tragedy. But I can assure you that the family is making the right choice. Mr. Webb is a danger to himself and others. He needs to be in a secure environment." He looked at me. He looked me right in the eyes and lied to 100 people. "This morning," he continued, "Mr. Webb suffered a severe psychotic episode. He became violent. He destroyed property. He did not know where he was. It is a mercy, really, to place him in care. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Poor Julius. Poor family. What a burden. Brett put his arm around Gabrielle. She leaned into him. They looked like the picture of strength in adversity. So Brett said, taking the mic back, let us raise a glass. To Julius. To his legacy. And to his rest. May he find peace in his new home. To Julius, the crowd echoed. They raised their glasses. They drank the expensive champagne. I sat there. I felt the blanket heavy on my legs. I felt the cool night air on my face. I looked at the glass of water on the table next to me. It was time. I moved. I did not struggle to stand. I did not push myself up with trembling arms. I stood up in one fluid motion. The blanket fell from my legs and pooled on the patio stones. I stood straight. I buttoned my jacket. I adjusted my cuffs. The movement caught Brett's eye. He froze. The glass was halfway to his mouth. He lowered it slowly. I walked toward the stage. I did not shuffle. I walked with the stride of a man who has walked steel girders 50 stories above the ground. I walked with the precision of an engineer. The crowd parted for me. They looked confused. They had just been told I was an invalid who could barely walk. Now I was cutting through them like a shark through water. I reached the stairs to the stage. I walked up them. My footsteps were heavy and loud on the wooden platform. Brett stepped back. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Gabrielle's hand went to her mouth. Dr. Vance looked like he was about to vomit. I reached out and took the microphone from Brett's hand. He did not resist. He was too shocked. His narrative was collapsing in real time. I looked out at the crowd. I saw the investors. I saw the neighbors. I saw the people who had eaten my food and drank my wine and whispered about my sanity. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. Thank you, I said. My voice was deep and steady. It resonated through the speakers. It bounced off the house. Thank you, Dr. Vance, for that colorful diagnosis. I was unaware that I was schizophrenic. It is amazing what you can diagnose from a cashed check without ever speaking to the patient. Dr. Vance turned white. He started to back away, looking for an exit. And thank you to my son-in-law, I continued, turning to face Brett. For that touching toast. You are right, Brett. I am going to a new home. But before I go, I wanted to share something with you. I looked at Gabrielle. She was trembling. Her silver dress shimmered. You wanted a party, I said to her. You wanted a spectacle. You wanted everyone to see the truth about this family. I pointed to the large projection screen that had been set up behind the stage. It was currently displaying a slideshow of photos. Photos of me from 20 years ago. Photos designed to show how much I had aged. Well, I said, I have a different slideshow. I have a family movie I think you should all see. I pulled a small remote control from my pocket. It was not for the projector. It was a trigger for the system Tyrell had rigged in the AV booth. Brett lunged for me. No, he shouted. Dad, stop. You are having an episode. He grabbed my arm. He tried to wrestle the microphone away. I did not move. I am old, but I am made of iron. I looked at him with contempt. Get your hands off me, I said. Before he could react, Tyrell stepped out of the darkness. He vaulted onto the stage. He grabbed Brett by the collar of his tuxedo and threw him backward. Brett slid across the stage and crashed into the drum kit. The cymbals crashed. The crowd screamed. Gabrielle shrieked. Security, she yelled. Someone call security. Help him. But the security guards did not move. They were my guards. I had paid them triple what Brett had offered. They stood with their arms crossed, watching the show. I pressed the button on the remote. The slideshow on the screen vanished. The screen went black for a second. Then a video appeared. It was grainy. It was black and white. It was time-stamped 4 months ago. It showed the basement stairs. It showed Brett dragging Mia by her hair. It showed him striking her across the face. The sound was amplified through the massive speakers. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot. The sound of Mia screaming Grandpa was a knife in the heart of everyone present. The crowd gasped. A collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the garden. I pressed the button again. The video changed. It showed Gabrielle standing at the top of the stairs holding a glass of wine, watching her husband chain her daughter to a pipe. I pressed the button again. It showed Brett sitting at his computer, logging into the fake offshore accounts, transferring my money. I pressed the button again. It showed the conversation in the bedroom. The audio was crystal clear. He is taking too long, Brett. We need to up the dose. I lowered the remote. I looked at the crowd. They were silent. They were horrified. The investors were looking at Brett with murder in their eyes. The neighbors were looking at Gabrielle with revulsion. "This is the family you are celebrating," I said into the microphone. "This is the legacy you toasted." Gabrielle was on her knees. She was covering her ears, trying to block out the sound of her own voice, plotting my death. Brett was trying to stand up among the drums. He looked wild. He looked like a trapped animal. I turned to him. "Happy birthday to me," I said. And then I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a thud that sounded like a gavel coming down on a death sentence. The microphone hit the patio stones with a screech of electronic feedback that pierced the night air like a siren. The sound made everyone flinch. Hands flew to cover ears. Glasses shattered as they were dropped in surprise. It was the perfect opening chord for the symphony of destruction I was about to conduct. I stood on the stage looking down at them. I felt like a judge handing down a sentence. I did not look at Brett. I did not look at Gabrielle. I looked at the massive projection screen behind me. I pressed the button on the remote. The slideshow of my life vanished. The smiling photos of a younger me holding a baby Gabrielle disappeared into the digital ether. For a second, the screen went black. The garden fell into a heavy, confused silence. The only sound was the wind rustling the leaves of the oak trees and the ragged breathing of my son-in-law, who was still sprawled among the drums. Then the video began. It was not high definition. It was the grainy black and white footage from the backup drive Tyrell had salvaged. But the lack of color made it more terrifying. It looked like a horror movie. It looked like a nightmare captured on tape. The timestamp in the corner read November 4th, 4 months ago, the day Mia disappeared. The image showed the top of the basement stairs. The angle was high looking down. The door burst open. Brett marched into the frame. He was dragging something. He was dragging Mia by her hair. The audio system which Brett had rented to brag about his wealth was now broadcasting his crime at maximum volume. The sound of Mia's sneakers squeaking on the floorboards was deafening. The sound of her sobbing was amplified until it felt like she was standing right next to every single person in the garden. "Please, Brett," she screamed in the video. "Please, I will be good. I promise." "Shut up," Brett roared. His voice boomed across the lawn, shaking the windows of the house. "You ungrateful little brat." On the screen, Brett spun around. He raised his hand. The motion was blurred, but the impact was not. He struck her across the face with the back of his hand. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot. It cracked through the air, sharp and violent. The crowd gasped. It was a collective sound of shock and revulsion. A woman in the front row screamed. A man dropped his drink. On the screen, Mia fell against the railing. She slid down the steps. She looked up at the camera. Her face was bloody. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Grandpa," she screamed. "Grandpa, help me." The name ripped through me. Even knowing she was safe, even knowing she was watching this from a secure location, hearing that scream again tore my heart open. But I did not look away. I forced myself to watch. I forced everyone to watch. The video cut to a new angle. The basement. The camera Tyrell had hacked. It showed Brett chaining her to the pipe. It showed him tightening the bolts. It showed him kicking the mattress toward her. "You stay here," he spat. "You stay here until you learn respect. You stay here until you sign the papers." The video cut again. It showed Gabrielle, my daughter. She was standing at the top of the stairs. She was holding a glass of wine. She looked bored. She looked annoyed. "Make her stop crying, Brett," she said in the video. Her voice was crystal clear. "It is giving me a headache. Turn up the music or something." The video froze on Gabrielle's face. Her cold, indifferent expression was projected 10 feet high. It loomed over the garden like a gargoyle. I lowered the remote. I looked at the audience. The silence was gone. It had been replaced by a low rumble of horror that was quickly turning into rage. The investors the men Brett owed money to were staring at the screen with slack jaws. They were criminals in suits, but even they had lines they did not cross. Beating a child and chaining her in a basement was a violation of the natural order. It was a level of depravity that made their financial crimes look like playground games. Dr. Vance, the psychiatrist, was shaking. He looked from the screen to me and back to the screen. He realized in that moment that his career was over. He realized he had signed his name to a conspiracy that was now being broadcast to the world. He started to back away, bumping into a table and knocking over a tray of champagne flutes. Then the screaming started. "You monster," a woman yelled, pointing at Brett. "You sick animal." "Call the police," a man shouted. "Someone call the police right now." The veneer of the party shattered. The expensive tablecloths and the string lights and the jazz music all dissolved, revealing the ugliness underneath. The guests were no longer an audience. They were a mob. They surged forward not to attack, but to distance themselves from the infection. They wanted to get away from Brett and Gabrielle. They wanted to wash the association off their skin. I looked at Gabrielle. She was on her knees in the grass. Her hands were over her ears, but she could not block out the truth. She looked up at the screen at her own face, and then she looked at me. Her expression changed. The fear vanished. The shock vanished. It was replaced by a pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the face of a demon exposed by the light. She scrambled to her feet. She did not run away. She ran toward me. "You!" she shrieked. "You old bastard!" She lunged for the stage. Her silver dress tore as she tripped over a speaker wire, but she kept coming. She was like a wild animal. Her nails were claws. Her teeth were bared. "You did this!" she screamed. "You ruined everything. Give me the remote. Turn it off. Turn it off right now." She scrambled up the stairs. She was fast. She was fueled by adrenaline and the collapse of her entire world. She reached for me. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to silence me. She wanted to tear the remote from my hand and make the darkness come back so she could hide in it. I did not move. I did not flinch. I stood my ground like a steel beam anchored in bedrock. "You ruined my life," she yelled, grabbing my lapels. "I hate you. I have always hated you. Why do you not just die?" She raised her hand to strike me, to hit her own father in front of 100 witnesses. But the blow never landed. A shadow moved from the side of the stage, fast, efficient, violent. Tyrell stepped into the light. He was not wearing his gardening clothes. He was wearing a black tactical suit that fit him like a second skin. He looked like a monolith. He moved with the speed of a man who had trained for this exact moment. He caught Gabrielle's wrist in midair. He did not squeeze hard enough to break it, but he held it with a force that made movement impossible. "Step back," Tyrell said. His voice was low and calm, but it carried over the shouting crowd. "Do not touch him." Gabrielle gasped. She looked at Tyrell. She recognized him. The gardener. The man she had ignored for years. The man Brett had fired yesterday. "Let go of me," she hissed. "You are fired. Get your hands off me." "You do not employ me," Tyrell said, pushing her gently but firmly backward. "Mr. Webb does. And you are done here." He released her wrist and shoved her away from me. She stumbled back, her high heels twisting on the wooden planks. She fell hard, landing in a heap of silver silk and rage. I looked down at her. "You ruined your own life, Gabrielle," I said. "I just turned on the lights." But the chaos was not over. Brett had managed to stand up. He was swaying. His tuxedo was torn. His hair was wild. He looked at the screen where his crime was frozen in time. He looked at the investors who were pulling out their phones, probably calling their lawyers or their enforcers. He looked at Gabrielle on the floor, and then he looked at me. His eyes were glazed. He was a trapped rat. He had no way out. The money was gone. The house was gone. His reputation was gone. Prison was waiting for him. The loan sharks were waiting for him. He reached behind his back, under the tail of his tuxedo jacket tucked into the waistband of his pants. I saw the glint of metal. "Gun," someone screamed from the crowd. "He has a gun!" Panic exploded. It was absolute pandemonium. The guests stampeded. Tables were overturned. Chairs were thrown aside. People dove behind trees and bushes. They scrambled over the garden walls. The screams were high and terrified. Brett pulled the weapon. It was a small black pistol. Cheap. Nasty. The kind of gun a coward buys to feel powerful. He pointed it at me. His hand was shaking violently. "Stop!" he screamed. "Everyone stop!" The crowd froze. Some people were on the ground covering their heads. Others were frozen mid-stride. The silence returned, but this time it was the silence of imminent death. "Turn it off!" Brett yelled, waving the gun at the screen and then back at me. "Turn it off, Julius, or I swear to God I will kill you. I have nothing left to lose." He was right. He had nothing left to lose. That made him the most dangerous thing in the world. Tyrell stepped in front of me. He made himself a human shield. He did not have a weapon drawn. He stood with his hands open, palms out. "Put it down," Brett Tyrell said. "Do not make this worse." "Move, Gardner." Brett spat. "This is between me and him. He stole my money. He stole my life. I did not steal anything," I said from behind Tyrell. "I just took back what was mine." "Shut up," Brett shrieked. He took a step closer. He was at the bottom of the stairs. The gun was leveled at Tyrell's chest. I felt a cold calm settle over me. I had calculated the angles. I had calculated the risks. I knew Brett. He was a bully. He hurt little girls in dark basements. He did not shoot men who looked him in the eye. But desperation changes the math. Desperation introduces variables that cannot be predicted. Brett looked at the investors huddled by the patio. "I can fix this," he babbled. "The video is a fake. It is a deep fake." The old man made it. "He is crazy. I told you he was crazy. Just give me a chance." Nobody believed him. He knew nobody believed him. He looked back at me. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Say it, Julius," he demanded. "Tell them it is a lie. Tell them you are sick. Fix this." I stepped out from behind Tyrell. Tyrell tried to stop me, but I put a hand on his arm. "It is okay, son," I said. I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down the barrel of the gun. I looked at the man who had tortured my granddaughter. "I am not sick, Brett," I said, "and I am not lying. You are done. It is over. Put the gun down before you add murder to your list of failures." Brett's face crumpled. He looked like he was going to cry. He looked like a child who had broken a toy and was afraid of the punishment, but his finger did not relax. It tightened. "I will do it," he whispered. "I swear I will do it." Sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting closer. The police were coming. Harper had timed it perfectly. Brett heard them too. He looked toward the street. The red and blue lights were already flashing against the trees. Panic overtook him. He swung the gun back toward me. His eyes went wide. He was going to shoot. He was going to take me with him. I braced myself. But before he could pull the trigger, a sound cut through the air. A voice, clear and strong. "Daddy, stop!" The voice came from the side gate. Brett froze. He turned his head. The gate swung open. A police officer stepped through, then another. And between them, in a wheelchair, pushing herself forward with hands that were bandaged but strong, was Mia. She was clean. Her hair was washed. She was wearing a new dress. She looked frail, but her eyes were burning with a fire that could consume the world. She looked at Brett. She looked at the gun. "Shoot me," she said. The crowd gasped. "Shoot me, Daddy," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Finish what you started, or are you too much of a coward to look me in the eye when you do it?" Brett stared at her. He stared at the girl he had buried, the girl he thought was broken. She was not broken. She was the hammer. His hand dropped. The gun hung loosely at his side. He looked at me. He looked at Gabrielle, who was still on the floor sobbing. He looked at the police officers who had their weapons drawn and aimed at his chest. He realized then that he was not the main character in this story. He was just the villain, and the villain always loses. He dropped the gun. It hit the grass with a dull thud. He fell to his knees. He put his hands on his head. "It is over," I said softly. And for the first time in 4 months, I breathed. The sirens cut through the night air like a knife slicing through the tension in the garden. The red and blue lights from the police cruisers washed over the high stone walls, casting long, dancing shadows that made the party guests look like ghosts. Brett stood on the edge of the stage, his chest heaving, his cheap pistol shaking in his hand. He was a man standing on the edge of a cliff, looking for a way down, but finding only gravity waiting for him. He looked at me with eyes that were wide and white with panic. He looked at Tyrell, who stood like a statue of judgment, his hands raised but his body ready to spring. Then the sound of the heavy iron gate at the side of the house grinding open drew everyone's attention. It was a sound of finality, a sound that signaled the end of the play. Brett whipped his head around the gun barrel, following his gaze. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a wide corridor through the manicured lawn. They moved back not just out of fear of the gun, but out of a sudden reverence for what was coming through the gate. 2 uniformed officers stepped through, first their weapons drawn and leveled at the stage. They moved with precision, clearing the path. Behind them came Lawyer Harper. She was not wearing a festive dress. She was wearing a trench coat that looked like armor, and her face was set in a grim line of determination. And then she stepped aside. A wheelchair rolled into the garden. The wheels crunched softly on the gravel path. It was a sound that seemed louder than the sirens, louder than the screaming guests, louder than the beating of my own heart. Mia sat in the chair. She was not the vibrant teenager in the fake photos Gabrielle had shown me. She was not the skier on the mountain. She was a survivor of a war that had been fought in the dark. Her legs were covered by a thick wool blanket, but I knew that beneath it her ankles were wrapped in bandages where the chains had eaten into her skin. Her face was pale, almost translucent in the harsh police lights. Her hair, which used to be long and thick, was cut short and uneven, a testament to the jagged shears Brett had used to humiliate her. But her head was high, her chin was lifted. She pushed the wheels forward herself. Her hands were wrapped in white gauze, but she gripped the metal rims with a strength that defied her physical condition. She rolled past the frozen guests. She rolled past the tables laden with expensive food she had been denied for months. She rolled past the pool where she used to swim in the summers before her life was stolen. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It was a sound of pure heartbreak. The investors, the neighbors, the friends, they all saw her. They saw the truth that had been hidden beneath their feet. There was no denying this. There was no spinning this. The girl who was supposed to be in Switzerland was here, and she bore the marks of a prisoner. Gabrielle let out a sound that was half scream and half sob. She was still on the ground, her silver dress ruined in the dirt. She looked at her daughter, and for a second I saw a flicker of something that might have been shame. But it vanished, quickly replaced by the cold calculation of a cornered animal realizing the trap had snapped shut. Mia did not look at her mother. She did not look at the guests. She did not look at me. She looked only at Brett. She rolled the chair until she was 10 feet from the stage. She stopped. She locked the brakes. She sat there exposed and vulnerable, yet infinitely more powerful than the man with the gun. Brett stared down at her. The pistol wavered in his grip. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He was looking at a ghost. He was looking at his crimes made flesh. "Hello, Daddy," Mia said. Her voice was raspy, damaged from months of screaming into soundproof foam, but it carried across the yard with bell-like clarity. Brett flinched as if she had struck him. "Mia," he whispered. His voice was a cracked ruin. "You look surprised," Mia said. "Did you think I died in the warehouse? Did you think I starved in the dark while you drank champagne?" Brett took a step back, his heel catching on a microphone cable. "No," he stammered. "No, I was coming back. I was going to let you go." "Liar," she said. The word was a whip. "You told me I would never leave. You told me the quiet room was my new home. You told me Grandpa was dead." She pointed a bandaged finger at me. "He is right there," she said. "He is alive. And I am alive. And you are done." The police officers moved closer, tightening the circle. "Drop the weapon!" a sergeant shouted, his voice amplified by a megaphone. "Drop it now!" Brett swung the gun wildly. He pointed it at the police, then at Tyrell, then back at me. He was losing his mind. The reality of his situation was crushing him. He realized there was no deal to be made. There was no lie big enough to cover this. He looked at Mia. He leveled the gun at her chest. "I will do it," he screamed. Tears were streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat. "I will take you all with me. If I am going down, you are coming too." The crowd screamed. Tyrell tensed, ready to dive in front of the bullet. But Mia did not flinch. She did not cower. She leaned forward in her chair. She looked down the barrel of the cheap pistol and she smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of someone who has already died and come back. "Do it," she said. The silence in the garden was absolute. Even the sirens seemed to fade into the background. "Shoot me, Daddy," she said. Her voice dripped with a cold venom that chilled my blood. "Finish what you started. You beat me. You starved me. You chained me to a pipe like a dog. You already killed the girl I was, so go ahead. Pull the trigger." Brett's hand shook violently. The gun rattled. "What are you waiting for?" Mia taunted him. "Are you scared? You were not scared when I was tied up. You were not scared when I was begging for water. You felt big then, didn't you? You felt like a king." She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Look at you now. You are shaking. You are crying. You are pathetic. Shoot me, Brett. Shoot me or admit that you are nothing but a coward who preys on little girls." Brett stared at her. He stared into eyes that held no fear, only judgment. He realized in that moment that he had no power over her. He had stripped everything away from her, and in doing so, he had made her invincible. He could kill her body, but he could not break her spirit because he had already tried and failed. He looked at the gun in his hand. It looked heavy. It looked useless. He looked at me. He saw the cold engineering calculation in my eyes. He looked at Gabrielle, who was sobbing into the grass. He looked at the police who had their rifles trained on his heart. He let out a long, broken wail. It was the sound of a man watching his soul evaporate. His arm dropped. The gun slipped from his fingers. It hit the wooden stage with a dull thud. Before the sound had even faded, the police moved. It was a blur of motion, A tactical officer tackled Brett, driving his shoulder into Brett's midsection. They hit the floor of the stage hard. Brett did not fight. He went limp. He let them twist his arms behind his back. He let them snap the handcuffs on his wrists. "Get off me," he sobbed into the wood. "Please just get off me." Tyrell stepped forward and kicked the gun away, sending it skittering off the stage into the grass. He looked at me and nodded. The threat was neutralized. I looked at Gabrielle. As soon as Brett hit the ground, she moved. She scrambled across the lawn on her hands and knees. She crawled toward the stage. She crawled toward me. She ignored her daughter. She ignored the police. She came to the source of the money. She came to the man she thought she could still manipulate. "Dad," she wailed. She grabbed the hem of my pants. Her expensive silk dress was stained with mud and grass. Her makeup was smeared across her face, making her look like a melting wax figure. "Dad, please, you have to listen to me." It was him. It was all him. She clung to my leg. I looked down at her. I felt nothing. No pity, no love, just a profound sense of disgust. "He forced me," she cried, looking up at me with desperate eyes. "He threatened me. He said he would hurt me if I did not help him. I was scared, Dad. I wanted to tell you. I swear I wanted to tell you. I tried to feed her. I tried to stop him." I looked over at Mia. She was watching her mother. Her expression was blank. She knew the truth. I looked at the police officer standing near the stage. He was waiting for a signal. "Officer," I said, pointing at my daughter. "That woman is an accomplice to kidnapping, torture, and conspiracy to commit murder. She is also guilty of attempted poisoning. I have the evidence on a hard drive in my car." Gabrielle's face went slack. Her jaw dropped. "What?" she whispered. "Number, Dad. Number." I turned to her. I looked her in the eye for the last time. "You are not a victim, Gabrielle," I said. "You are the architect. You poured the poison. You locked the door. You watched your own child suffer, and you worried about the noise." She reached for me again, but this time Tyrell stepped in between us. He stood like a wall. "Do not come near him," Tyrell said. The police officer moved in. He grabbed Gabrielle's arm. He spun her around. He pulled her wrists behind her back. "No!" she screamed. She started to fight. She kicked out. She thrashed like a fish on a hook. "Not me. Not me. It was Brett. It was all Brett. I am a good mother. I am a good daughter." The officer handcuffed her. The metal clicked shut. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. They dragged her away. She was screaming my name. She was screaming Mia's name. She was begging. She was bargaining. She was blaming everyone but herself. I watched them load her into the back of a squad car. I watched them shove Brett into another one. The flashing lights painted their faces in red and blue. The party was over. The guests were silent, huddled in small groups, watching the end of the dynasty. The investors were already on their phones, calling their lawyers, trying to distance themselves from the wreckage. I walked over to Mia. I knelt down beside her wheelchair. I took her bandaged hand in mine. "Are you okay?" I asked. She looked at the empty stage. She looked at the grass where her mother had been dragged away. She took a deep breath. It rattled in her chest. She looked at me. Her eyes were clear. The fire was gone, replaced by a deep exhaustion, but also a deep peace. "I am okay, Grandpa," she said. "They are gone." "Yes, baby," I said. "They are gone, and they are never coming back." Lawyer Harper walked over to us. She put a hand on my shoulder. "We need to go to the station, Julius," she said. "We need to make the statements. We need to process the evidence. It is going to be a long night." I stood up. I nodded. "I am ready," I said. Tyrell took the handles of the wheelchair. "Let us go home," he said. "Or at least let us go away from here." We walked toward the gate. I did not look back at the house. I did not look back at the garden. That life was over. The structure had failed. It had been demolished. Now we had to clear the rubble. We had to dig through the debris. And then when the dust settled, we would build something new, something stronger, something that could not be broken by greed or lies. I walked out of the gate and into the night. My hand was on Mia's shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, I did not feel the weight of the secrets. I felt only the cool air and the solid ground beneath my feet. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and cold sweat. It was a smell I knew well from my time working on government contract sites, but here it was concentrated. It was the scent of men who realized they had run out of options. I stood behind the one-way mirror, watching Brett pace the small gray room. He looked like a caged tiger that had lost its teeth. His tuxedo was torn at the shoulder, and his expensive dress shirt was stained with sweat. He was shouting at the detective, demanding his phone call, demanding his rights, demanding respect he had never earned. I turned to Lawyer Harper. She was standing next to me reviewing a file on her tablet. Her face was illuminated by the blue light of the screen. She looked calm. She looked like an executioner who enjoyed her work. "He wants his lawyer," I said. "Let him call," Harper said. "It is the moment we have been waiting for." The detective inside the room finally handed Brett a phone. Brett snatched it with trembling hands. He dialed a number from memory. I knew who he was calling. He was calling Marcus Stone, a high-priced criminal defense attorney known for getting wealthy scumbags out of trouble. Stone charged a $5,000 retainer just to pick up the phone. I watched Brett's face as the call connected. He turned his back to the detective, hunched over the phone like he was protecting a secret. "Marcus," he said, his voice cracking. "It is Brett. I am at the precinct. They arrested me. Yes, it is insane. The old man went crazy. He set me up. I need you down here now. Get the bail money ready." He paused. He listened. "What do you mean, declined?" Brett asked. His voice rose an octave. "That is impossible. I wrote you a check yesterday, from the joint account. There is plenty of money in there. Julius just transferred $50,000. I smiled. The check I had written. The check for the ski trip. He had deposited it, but he did not know I had flagged the account for fraud immediately after. The bank had frozen the transaction pending review, and the rest of the money he thought was sitting in the account waiting for him, was in the Cook Islands." Brett's face turned the color of ash. "What do you mean, insufficient funds?" he screamed into the phone. "Check it again. There is $5,000 in the operating account." I leaned closer to the glass. I wished I could hear the other end of the line. I knew what Stone was saying. Stone was telling him that the check had bounced. Stone was telling him that the operating account, the one I left untouched except for the transfer I made last night, had a balance of $10. $10. Not enough for a retainer, not enough for a parking ticket. "You cannot do this," Brett yelled. "I am good for it. I have the house. The house is worth $2 million. Take a lien on the house." "Just get down here." He listened for another 10 seconds. Then he pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at it. The line had gone dead. Stone had hung up. Lawyers like Stone do not work on credit. They smell poverty, and they run. Brett dropped the phone on the table. He looked at his hands. He looked at the walls. The arrogance was draining out of him, leaving only a hollow panic. He realized he was alone. He realized the safety net he thought he had woven out of my money had turned into a noose. Harper tapped on the glass. "My turn," she said. She gathered her files. She smoothed her trench coat. She walked out of the observation room and entered the interrogation room. Brett looked up. Hope flared in his eyes for a second. He thought she was there to help him. He thought she was there to negotiate. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Julius Webb's attorney," Harper said. She did not sit down. She stood at the end of the table looking down at him. "And I am here to clarify your financial situation so you do not waste the court's time requesting bail you cannot pay." "I have money," Brett spat. "I have assets. The house is mine. I have the deed." Harper opened her file. She pulled out a document. It was a copy of a property transfer deed dated 3 months ago. "You have a forgery," Harper said. "You have a piece of paper signed by a criminal notary who is currently in federal custody, singing like a bird. But this," she tapped the paper on the table, "this is the real deed." Brett squinted at it. "Mr. Webb sold the house 3 months ago," Harper said. "He sold it to the St. Jude Trust, a charitable organization for underprivileged youth. He retained a lifetime life estate, which means he can live there until he dies. But the ownership, the equity, belongs to the trust." Brett shook his head. "No, that is a lie. I checked the registry." "You checked the public cash," Harper corrected him. "You did not check the county clerk's latest filing. The transfer was recorded and sealed due to the sensitive nature of the trust. You have been living in a house you do not own. You have been borrowing money against a house you do not own." She pulled out another paper. This one had the logo of the IRS. "And because you secured loans against property that was not yours," Harper continued, "you have committed mortgage fraud. But that is not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is that you declared that loan income as capital gains on your taxes to try and wash the money. The IRS has flagged you. They have frozen every asset attached to your social security number. Brett slumped in his chair. He looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. So to summarize, Harper said, her voice cold and professional, you have no house. You have no cash. Your bank accounts are frozen. You have no lawyer because you cannot pay one. And the loan sharks you owe $2 million to, they know you are in here. They know you cannot pay. Brett started to cry. It was a pathetic sound. I am dead, he whispered. If I go to prison, I am dead. If I get out, I am dead. Harper closed the file. That seems to be the case, she said. You built a life on debt and lies, Brett. Now the bill is due, and you are going to pay it with your life. You will likely die in a cell, an old man with nothing to his name, just like you tried to do to Julius. She turned and walked out. She did not look back. I watched him put his head on the table and sob. I felt no pity. I felt the satisfaction of a mathematician who has balanced a complex equation. The numbers added up. The result was 0. I left the observation room. I had one more stop to make. Gabrielle was in holding cell number 4. It was a small room with a metal bench and a toilet in the corner. She was sitting on the bench, hugging her knees. Her silver dress was ripped and dirty. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in black streaks, making her look like a skull. She looked up when the guard opened the door. Dad, she breathed. I stepped inside. The guard closed the door but stayed right outside the window. Dad, get me out of here, she said, scrambling off the bench. She reached for me but stopped when she saw the look on my face. It was not the look of a father. It was the look of a stranger. Please, she begged. It is a mistake. I did not know he was going to hurt her. I was scared. Stop, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the small room. Do not lie to me, Gabrielle. Not anymore. I read your diary. Her face went white. She stepped back, hitting the wall. I read what you wrote, I said. I read how you hated Mia because I loved her. I read how you suggested the basement. I read how you put the poison in my tea and hoped my heart would stop. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She knew there was no defense against her own words. Why, I asked. It was the only question that still mattered. Why, Gabrielle? I gave you everything. I paid for your school. I bought you cars. I loved you. Why was it never enough? She stared at me. Her eyes changed. The fear was replaced by a flash of the old anger, the entitlement that had rotted her soul. Because it was always about you, she hissed. Julius Webb, the great engineer. The genius. You were always so perfect, so moral. You made me feel small, Dad. You made me feel like I could never measure up. And then Mia came along. And you looked at her the way you used to look at me. She stepped closer, her hands clenched into fists. I wanted it to be mine, she said. The money, the house, the respect. I was tired of waiting for you to die. I was tired of asking for an allowance like a child. I am 32 years old. You are a child, I said. You are a spoiled, cruel child who broke her toys because she did not want to share. She started to cry again, but this time it was angry tears, tears of frustration. You cannot leave me here, she said. I am your daughter. I am your flesh and blood. You cannot let me go to prison. I will die in here. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched her own daughter being tortured and worried about the noise. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a photo. It was a real photo of Mia, one I had taken years ago when she was 5, laughing on a swing set. My daughter died a long time ago, I said. My daughter died the day she watched a man hit her child and did nothing. My daughter died the day she put a chain around a little girl's ankle. I dropped the photo on the floor. It landed face up between us. You are not my daughter, I said. You are just a defendant, and you are on your own. Dad, please, she screamed. She lunged for me, but I stepped back. I turned around. I knocked on the door. The guard opened it immediately. Goodbye, Gabrielle, I said without looking back. I walked out of the cell. I heard her screaming my name. I heard her throwing herself against the door. I walked down the long concrete hallway. Her voice faded with every step. I walked out of the police station and into the cool night air. Tyrell was waiting by the truck. Lawyer Harper was waiting in her car. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. It tasted like freedom. The structure had been demolished. The debris had been cleared. The foundation was bare. It was time to rebuild. 6 months have passed since the night the blue lights flashed in the garden. Time does not heal all wounds. That is a lie people tell you to make you feel better about the scars. Time just turns the pain into something else. It turns it into a dull ache that tells you when it is going to rain. It turns it into a memory you can look at without screaming. We are living in a cabin by the lake now. It is smaller than the big house. It is made of cedar and stone. It smells of pine needles and wood smoke. There is no basement. I made sure of that. The house sits on a solid slab foundation. Everything is above ground. Everything is in the light. Mia is walking. She still has a limp in her left leg where the chain damaged the nerves, but she is walking. Every morning at 6, we go out to the deck. The sun comes up over the water, turning the gray surface into gold. We lay out the yoga mats. We do our exercises. Stretch, I say. Reach for the sky, Mia. She grimaces. The scar tissue on her ankle pulls tight. She breathes through her teeth. She pushes past the pain. She is stronger than she looks. She is stronger than I ever was. Some nights are hard. Some nights I wake up to the sound of screaming. It is a high, thin sound that cuts through the cedar walls. I run to her room. I find her thrashing in the sheets, fighting off ghosts. She thinks she is back in the dark. She thinks the door is locked. I do not turn on the bright lights. I sit on the edge of the bed. I put my hand on her shoulder. I hum the river song. You are safe, I whisper. The door is open. The key is in your hand. She wakes up gasping. She touches my face. She checks the lock on the window to make sure it is unlocked. She needs to know she can get out. I am sorry, Grandpa, she says. I woke you up again. You did not wake me. I lie. I was just checking the structural integrity of the roof. We sit there in the dark, watching the moon on the lake. We do not talk about Gabrielle. We do not talk about Brett. They are in prison awaiting trial. The prosecutors say it is an open and shut case. They will likely die in cages. It is a fitting end. But we do not talk about them. We talk about the birds. We talk about the water. We talk about tomorrow. Recovery is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You go up and you go down, but you keep moving forward. I have hired a therapist for her, a woman who specializes in trauma. She comes to the cabin twice a week. I hear them talking on the porch. I hear Mia laugh sometimes. It is a rusty sound, like a machine that hasn't been used in years, but it is getting smoother. I have my own therapy. It is called rebuilding. Tyrell drove up the gravel driveway on a Tuesday afternoon. His truck was clean. He was wearing a button-down shirt tucked into his jeans. He looked like a man who had a purpose. He walked up the steps to the deck where I was reviewing blueprints. "Mr. Webb," he said, "you wanted to see me." "Sit down, Tyrell," I said. He sat. He looked at Mia, who was reading a book by the railing. She waved at him. He smiled. It was a genuine smile, a smile that reached his eyes. "How is the job hunt going?" I asked. "It is slow," he said. "People see the military record and they get nervous. Or they see me and they just want a bouncer. I do not want to be a bouncer. I want to build something." I pushed a folder across the table. It was thick. It was heavy. "Open it," I said. He opened the folder. He looked at the documents. He frowned. He read the top page. Then he read it again. "Titan Security Solutions," he read aloud. "It is a new company," I said. "Incorporated yesterday. Fully licensed, bonded, insured. It has a starting capital of $200,000. It has a lease on an office space downtown. It has a list of initial clients, including my patent holding firm and several of my old engineering contacts who need site security." Tyrell looked up at me. His mouth was slightly open. "I do not understand," he said. "Who owns this?" "Read the next page," I said. He turned the page. He stared at the name on the incorporation papers. Tyrell Jackson, Chief Executive Officer. "Me," he whispered. "You," I said. "You have the skills, Tyrell. You have the discipline. You have the instinct. You saw what I missed. You heard the crying when I was deaf. You saved my granddaughter." He shook his head. "Mr. Webb, I cannot accept this. This is too much money. I cannot pay you back." "It is not a loan," I said. "It is an investment. I am the silent partner. I own 10%. You own 90%. You run the show. You hire the men. You protect the people who cannot protect themselves." He looked at the papers. His hands were shaking. He looked at Mia. She had put down her book. She was watching us. She nodded at him. Why, he asked. Why me? Because you are the only man I trust, I said. My own blood betrayed me. My own daughter tried to kill me. You were a stranger who mowed my lawn and you put your life on the line for my family. That makes you family, Tyrell. That makes you the son I should have had. Tears welled up in his eyes. He blinked them away. He stood up. He extended his hand. I will not let you down, sir, he said. I promise you. I will build this into the best security firm in the state. I stood up and shook his hand. His grip was firm. It was the grip of a builder. I know you will, I said. Now get to work. You have a business to run. He walked down the steps. He walked taller. He walked like a CEO. He got into his truck and drove away to start his new life. I looked at Mia. That was nice, she said. It was necessary, I said. We invest in the people who matter. We reinforce the structures that hold us up. 2 days later, we had one last errand to run. I told Mia to put on her shoes. I told her we were going for a ride. She did not ask where. She trusts me now. She trusts that I will never take her back to the dark. We got into my truck. I drove out of the woods and onto the highway. I drove back toward the city, back toward the suburbs. We pulled into the neighborhood. The trees were green. The lawns were manicured. It looked the same as it always did, a perfect facade hiding a million secrets. I turned onto our old street. I stopped the truck in front of the house. It looked different now. The grass was overgrown. Tyrell had not mowed it in months. The windows were dark. There was a large orange sticker on the front door. Seized property. U.S. Marshals Service. There was yellow police tape fluttering from the porch railing. It looked like a corpse. It looked like a dead thing rotting in the sun. Mia stared at it. She did not shake. She did not cry. She just looked at it with a cold curiosity. I hate this place, she said. I know, I said. I hate it too. Why are we here? She asked. To see it, I said. To see that it is just wood and brick. To see that it has no power over us. It is just a house, Mia. It is not a monster. The monsters are gone. She looked at the basement window, the one Tyrell had looked through. It was boarded up. I used to think I would die in there, she whispered. I used to think that house was the whole world. It was a cage, I said. But we broke the bars. She nodded. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was strong. Her fingers were no longer skeletal. They were the hands of a young woman who had survived hell and walked out the other side. Are you going to sell it? She asked. I already did, I said. I sold it to a demolition company. They are tearing it down next week. They are going to dig up the foundation. They are going to fill in the basement. They are going to turn the lot into a community park. A park, she said. She smiled, a small, sad smile. That is good. Children should play there. They should make happy noises to cover up the bad ones. Yes, I said. That is the plan. I looked at the house one last time. I remembered bringing Gabrielle home there as a baby. I remembered the birthdays, the holidays, the lies. I looked at the front door where she had welcomed me back with poison in her heart. I felt a twinge of sadness, not for the loss of the house, but for the loss of the illusion. I had lived a lie for a long time. I had believed I was safe. I had believed I was loved. But the truth is better. The truth is hard and cold like steel, but it holds you up. I put the truck in gear. Let us go, I said. Where, she asked. Forward, I said. We do not live in the past anymore. We live in the now. I turned the truck around. I drove away from the house. I watched it shrink in the rearview mirror until it was just a speck, and then it was gone. We drove west. The sun was setting. It was a giant orange ball sinking into the horizon. It painted the sky in colors of fire and gold. Mia rolled down the window. She stuck her hand out. She felt the wind against her skin. She closed her eyes and breathed. We are free, Grandpa, she said. Yes, baby, I said. We are free. And as we drove into the sunset, leaving the darkness behind us, I finally felt the structural integrity of my life return. The load was heavy, but the foundation was strong. We had rebuilt, and this time we had built it to last. We are taught that blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood is just a stain that needs to be washed away. My journey taught me that the people who share your DNA are not always your tribe. Sometimes the monsters live in the guest room and the heroes mow the lawn. I learned that trust is not a gift you give freely, it is a wage that must be earned every single day. And when your world collapses, you do not mourn the rubble. You pick up a hammer and you build something better, something that cannot be broken by greed. If this story chilled your bones or opened your eyes, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself? Until next time, stay safe and trust your instincts.